The klaxons blare as Joseph Russell sprints through the evacuating Tellarite colony, his eyes scanning for any signs of life left behind. He's defying direct orders, risking his career and his life, but he can't shake the feeling that someone needs him. That's when he sees her, a young Tellarite female, abandoned and struggling to move. Joseph's breath catches in his throat. He's found what he was looking for, but now faces an impossible choice. The ground trembles beneath his feet, a reminder that time is running out. The natural disaster looming over the planet won't wait for stragglers or heroes. "Hey there," he calls out, approaching the girl cautiously. Her eyes, wide with fear, lock onto his. "I'm Joseph. What's your name?" "Estella," she manages, her voice trembling. Joseph kneels beside her, assessing her condition. Stella's limbs are bent at odd angles, and her speech is halting. It's clear she has a pre-existing disability, affecting her mobility and communication. The realization hits him. Her own clan left her behind, deeming her a liability in the chaos of evacuation. Without hesitation, Joseph scoops Stella into his arms. "I've got you," he assures her, already turning back the way he came. His muscles strain as he carries her through the deserted streets, the rumbling of the planet growing more intense with each passing second. Joseph's personal spacecraft comes into view, a beacon of hope in the abandoned landing zone. He stumbles up the ramp, depositing Stella gently in the co-pilot's seat before throwing himself into the pilot's chair. His fingers fly over the controls, initiating the launch sequence. The ship shudders as it lifts off, violent tremors racking the planet's surface. Debris pelts the hull as Joseph navigates through the turbulent atmosphere. Alarms blare, warning of damage to the craft, but Joseph's steady hands keep them on course. Breaking free of the dying world, Joseph sets a course for the nearest human outpost on a neighboring moon. He glances at Stella, who stares back with a mix of fear and wonder. "You're safe now," he tells her, hoping his words bridge the gap between their species. As they approach the outpost, Joseph's communicator crackles to life. The voice of his superior cuts through the static, demanding an explanation for his unauthorized delay and the presence of an alien on board. Joseph takes a deep breath, knowing the battle is far from over. Upon landing, Joseph is immediately confronted by a group of officials. He stands his ground as they berate him for disobeying evacuation orders and bringing an uncleared alien to the outpost. Meanwhile, medical staff whisk Stella away, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern as they tend to her injuries and assess her disability. In the hours that follow, Joseph learns the full extent of Stella's situation. She has no remaining family and faces deportation to a Tellarite orphanage. The thought of abandoning her to an uncertain fate twists his gut. Despite the risks, Joseph begins the process of applying for emergency guardianship, citing humanitarian grounds. His decision sends shockwaves through the human and Tellarite communities. Cross-species adoption is unprecedented, viewed with suspicion and outright hostility by both sides. Diplomatic tensions flare, turning Stella's fate into a political powder keg. Amidst the growing controversy, Joseph faces another challenge closer to home. His 14-year-old daughter, Sarah, who lives with him on the outpost, reacts to Stella's presence with a volatile mix of jealousy and resentment. Joseph finds himself caught between two vulnerable girls, each needing his support in different ways. As he navigates the complex legal and cultural challenges of adopting Stella, Joseph must also bridge the gap between the girls, helping them adjust to their new family dynamic. It's a delicate balance, made all the more precarious by the scrutiny they face from all sides. The situation comes to a head when Joseph receives a summons to appear before a joint human Tellarite tribunal. He must justify his actions and defend his right to care for Stella, knowing that the outcome will have far-reaching consequences for interspecies relations and challenge deeply held notions of family and responsibility. Standing at the threshold of the Tribunal chamber, Joseph takes a deep breath. He thinks of Stella's resilience, Sarah's potential for growth, and the promise of a family forged in the face of adversity. With determination in his heart, he steps forward, ready to fight for the future he believes in. As Joseph stepped into the Tribunal chamber, the air crackled with tension. 5 judges sat before him, 3 humans and 2 Tellarites, their faces impassive as they surveyed the room. Admiral Marcus Walker, a stern-faced man with graying hair, called the proceedings to order. "We are gathered here to address the unprecedented case of Joseph Russell and his petition for emergency guardianship of the Tellarite miner, Stella," Admiral Walker announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. Joseph took a deep breath, steadying himself as he approached the podium. He felt the weight of countless eyes upon him, human and Tellarite alike, as he began to present his case. "Honored judges," he started, his voice clear and unwavering, "I stand before you today not just as a terraforming engineer, but as a human being who couldn't turn his back on a child in need." He recounted the events of that fateful day, describing the chaos of the evacuation and his decision to go back for Stella. As he spoke, holographic displays flickered to life, showing data logs from his spacecraft and testimony from the outpost rescue team. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the chief medical officer, took the stand next. Her dark eyes were kind, but her voice was clinical as she presented her findings. "Stella's genetic condition is unique," Dr. Rodriguez explained, gesturing to a holographic display of Stella's DNA. "It affects her mobility and speech in ways that require specialized care that standard Tellarite orphanages are not equipped to provide." As the tribunal continued, Sarah Russell slipped away from the proceedings. Her feet carried her to the medical bay where Stella was being monitored. She paused at the threshold, watching as the young Tellarite struggled to communicate with the medical staff using a rudimentary translation device. Stella's frustration was palpable, her alien features contorted in a way that Sarah found surprisingly familiar. Before she knew it, Sarah had crossed the room. "Hi," she said softly, causing Stella to look up in surprise. "I'm Sarah, Joseph's daughter." Stella's eyes widened in recognition. She made a series of gestures, accompanied by halting sounds. Sarah bit her lip, then mimicked one of Stella's gestures. "Like this." Stella nodded eagerly, and for the next few minutes, they engaged in a halting but sincere attempt at communication. Sarah found herself smiling, her earlier resentment fading in the face of Stella's tenacity. Back in the tribunal chamber, the atmosphere had grown tense. Ambassador Groknak, a stout Tellarite with an impressive beard, was on his feet, his voice rising in anger. "This human has no right to interfere with Tellarite affairs," he bellowed. "The clan's decision is final. To allow this adoption would be an affront to our sovereignty and our cultural norms." Joseph clenched his fists, ready to argue, when suddenly alarms began to blare throughout the outpost. Admiral Walker's communicator chirped urgently. "This is Walker," he answered, his face growing grave as he listened. He turned to address the room. "We have a situation. A swarm of asteroids has been detected on a collision course with the outpost. All non-essential personnel must evacuate to the emergency shelters immediately." The chamber erupted into chaos. As people rushed to follow evacuation protocols, Joseph's mind raced. He approached Admiral Walker, an idea forming. "Sir, I think I can help," he said. "If we reconfigure the shield generators and use strategically placed explosive charges, we might be able to deflect the asteroids." Walker nodded sharply. "Do it. I'll get you whatever resources you need." As Joseph turned to leave, he caught sight of Sarah entering the chamber with Stella. His heart clenched, torn between his duty to the outpost and his need to protect the girls. "Sarah," he called out, rushing over to them, "I need you to take Stella to the emergency shelter. Can you do that for me?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded resolutely. "We'll be okay, Dad. Go save the outpost." Joseph squeezed her shoulder, then knelt to meet Stella's eyes. "Stay with Sarah. She'll keep you safe." As Joseph raced off to implement his plan, Sarah took Stella's hand. "Come on," she said, guiding the Tellarite girl through the panicking crowds. "We need to get to the shelter." The corridors were a maze of frantic activity, but Sarah moved with purpose, her grip on Stella's hand firm and reassuring. When they encountered a jammed door, it was Stella who pointed out an alternative route through the ventilation system. "Good thinking," Sarah said, helping Stella into the narrow passage. As they crawled through the ducts, the outpost shuddered around them. Sarah could hear the distant booms of Joseph's explosive charges detonating in space, each one a desperate attempt to save them all. Finally, they emerged into the crowded emergency shelter. Sarah found them a quiet corner and sat down, pulling Stella close. The Tellarite girl trembled slightly, and Sarah found herself humming a soft lullaby, the same one her father used to sing to her during terraforming storms. Outside, Joseph worked feverishly, coordinating teams and adjusting calculations on the fly. Each successful deflection was a small victory, but the asteroid swarm seemed endless. Sweat beaded on his brow as he raced against time, the fate of the outpost and his newfound family hanging in the balance. In the shelter, humans and Tellarites huddled together, differences temporarily forgotten in the face of shared danger. Sarah looked down at Stella, who had fallen into an uneasy sleep against her side. She realized with a start that she no longer saw an alien intruder, but a sister in need of protection. As the asteroid storm raged on, Joseph's plan continued to unfold, its success yet to be determined. In that moment of crisis, the true strength of their unconventional family unit was being forged, watched by two communities brought together by circumstance and the universal language of survival. Compassion. As the ground beneath them trembled, Sarah tightened her grip on Stella's hand, her earlier resentment forgotten in the face of their shared peril. Suddenly, the shelter's intercom crackled to life. Admiral Walker's voice, tense but controlled, filled the room. "Attention all personnel. We are implementing emergency protocols to counter the approaching asteroid swarm. Please remain calm and follow the instructions of your designated safety officers." Sarah's heart raced as she thought of her father, out there trying to save them all. She looked down at Stella, who gazed back with wide, frightened eyes. "It's going to be okay," Sarah whispered, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. Outside, Joseph sprinted through the corridors of the outpost, barking orders into his communicator. "Redirect power to the shield generators. I want those unmanned drones prepped and ready for deployment in 5 minutes." He burst into the control room, immediately assessing the holographic display of the approaching asteroid field. His fingers flew over the console, initiating the shield activation sequence. The air hummed with energy as the protective barrier flickered to life around the outpost. "Drones are ready, sir," a technician reported. Joseph nodded sharply. "Launch them. Target the largest asteroids first. We need to break them up before they hit the shield." As the drones sped towards their targets, Joseph watched the first wave of asteroids collide with the shield. The barrier rippled and strained, alarms blaring as the impact threatened to overwhelm it. "Adjust the shield frequency," Joseph shouted, his hands dancing across the controls. "Harmonize it with the asteroid composition." The shield stabilized, but Joseph knew they weren't out of danger yet. He glanced at the power readings, his mind racing through calculations and possibilities. Back in the shelter, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The air grew thick and hot, making it difficult to breathe. Sarah noticed Stella's antennae twitching, her alien features contorting in discomfort. "Something's wrong," Sarah muttered, looking around the crowded room. Others were starting to show signs of distress as well. She caught the eye of a nearby technician. "Hey, I think there's a problem with the life support systems." The technician rushed to a control panel, his face paling as he read the displays. "The asteroid impacts must have damaged the main systems. We're losing oxygen, and the temperature controls are malfunctioning." Panic began to spread through the shelter. Sarah stood up, her father's voice echoing in her head. In an emergency, clear heads save lives. She took a deep breath and raised her voice. "Everyone, listen up. We need to conserve energy and oxygen. Turn off any unnecessary devices and try to remain calm. Panicking will only make us use more air." To her surprise, people began to listen, human and Tellarite alike. As they worked to reduce power consumption, Sarah noticed Stella tilting her head, her antennae quivering. The young Tellarite tugged on Sarah's sleeve, pointing insistently at a section of wall. "What is it, Stella?" Sarah asked, following her gaze. She pressed her ear to the wall, straining to hear. There was a faint hissing sound, barely audible over the commotion in the room. An air leak. With Stella's help, Sarah located the small crack in the wall. She quickly fashioned a seal using emergency repair materials from a nearby kit, stemming the flow of precious oxygen. As she worked, she noticed the approving looks from both humans and Tellarites around her. Meanwhile, Joseph faced a new crisis. A massive asteroid, far larger than the others, loomed on the sensors. He watched in horror as the drone's explosives barely made a dent in its surface. "Sir," a junior officer said, her voice shaking, "our current defenses won't be enough to stop that one. If it hits us—" Joseph's mind raced, considering and discarding options in rapid succession. Then, a dangerous idea struck him. "The main power core," he muttered. "If we could channel its energy into a concentrated beam." He turned to Admiral Walker, who had joined him in the control room. "Sir, I have a plan, but it's risky. We could use the outpost's main power core to create an energy beam powerful enough to split that asteroid. But it would push our systems to the limit, maybe beyond." Walker's eyes narrowed as he considered the proposal. After a tense moment, he nodded. "Do it, Russell. It's our best shot." Joseph's fingers flew over the controls, rerouting power and reconfiguring systems. Alarms blared as the outpost's energy level spiked dangerously. "Brace for impact," he shouted as the beam lanced out into space. The massive asteroid glowed white-hot where the beam struck it. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash, the rock split apart, its pieces scattering in all directions. A cheer went up in the control room, but Joseph's relief was short-lived. The debris from the split asteroid overwhelmed a section of the shield, tearing through the outpost's outer hull. "Hull breach in Section 7G, someone shouted. "Emergency protocols engaging." Joseph's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. "There are workers trapped in that section," he said, already moving towards the door. "I'm going after them." As Joseph raced to coordinate the rescue, Sarah and Stella faced a new challenge in the shelter. The power fluctuation caused by the energy beam had fried the electronic lock on the bunker door. "We need to get this open," Sarah said, examining the manual release mechanism. "Stella, can you help me listen for the locking pins? We need to align them perfectly." Stella nodded, her sensitive hearing proving invaluable as they worked to open the heavy door. Around them, humans and Tellarites worked together, following Sarah's lead. Outside, Joseph guided the rescue team to the outpost's maze-like corridors, using his intimate knowledge of the facility to find alternative routes to the trapped workers. Time seemed to stretch as they raced against the failing life support systems in the damaged section. Finally, as the last of the asteroid swarm dissipated, Joseph's team reached the trapped workers. They emerged from the sealed section, battered but alive, to the cheers of the rescue team. In the aftermath, Admiral Walker stood before the assembled crowd in the outpost's main hall. "Today, we faced an unprecedented crisis," he began, his voice carrying across the silent room. "And we survived, thanks in no small part to the quick thinking and brave actions of Joseph Russell." Joseph felt a surge of relief as he saw Sarah and Stella enter the hall, safe and sound. As he moved to join them, he noticed something had changed. The looks directed at them from both humans and Tellarites were different now. Curious, respectful, even admiring. Admiral Walker continued, "In light of recent events, the Tribunal will reconvene in 48 hours to reassess the guardianship claim for the Tellarite miner, Stella." He turned to Joseph. "Until then, Mr. Russell, you are granted temporary custody." As the crowd dispersed, Joseph knelt down, embracing both Sarah and Stella. For a moment, they simply held each other, the stress and fear of the day giving way to relief and a newfound sense of unity. "Come on," Joseph said softly, standing up. "Let's go home." As they walked through the bustling corridors of the outpost, Joseph couldn't help but notice the way Sarah kept a protective arm around Stella, the two girls communicating with a mix of words and gestures. Something had shifted between them during the crisis, a bond forged in the face of danger. Joseph knew that the challenges were far from finished. The Tribunal still loomed, and the broader implications of their unique family unit had yet to be fully realized. But for now, as they entered their quarters and began to settle in for the night, he allowed himself a moment of hope. Stella yawned, her alien features softening with exhaustion. Sarah, without prompting, helped her to the spare room they had hurriedly prepared earlier. Joseph watched from the doorway as his daughter carefully tucked the blanket around Stella, murmuring a soft goodnight. As Sarah turned to leave the room, she caught her father's eye. A silent understanding passed between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together, all three of them. As the door to their quarters slid shut behind them, Joseph let out a long, weary sigh. The events of the past day had taken their toll, and exhaustion was etched on every line of his face. Yet, there was work to be done. "Sarah, can you help Stella get settled?" "I need to check in with the repair teams," Joseph said, already moving towards the communication panel. Sarah nodded, guiding Stella to the small bedroom they'd hastily prepared earlier. As she helped the young Tellarite into bed, she noticed Stella's antennae twitching nervously. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, surprising herself with the gentleness in her voice. "You're safe here," Stella chittered softly in response, her alien features relaxing slightly. Meanwhile, Joseph spent the next few hours coordinating repair efforts via comlink. The asteroid strike had left significant damage to the outpost infrastructure, and every available engineer was working overtime to restore critical systems. As the artificial night cycle began, Joseph finally collapsed onto the couch, his mind racing with everything that needed to be done. Sarah emerged from her room, unable to sleep. "Dad?" she asked hesitantly. "What happens now?" Joseph ran a hand through his hair. "We have 48 hours until the Tribunal reconvenes. Until then, we need to make this work." The next morning brought new challenges. Joseph was called away early to oversee repairs to the life support systems, leaving Sarah alone with Stella. "I'll be back as soon as I can," Joseph promised, pausing at the door. "Just try to keep her comfortable, okay?" Sarah nodded, apprehension clear on her face as she watched her father leave. At first, the silence between Sarah and Stella was awkward. Sarah busied herself with her schoolwork, occasionally glancing at the young Tellarite, who sat quietly observing her surroundings. As Sarah struggled with a particularly difficult math problem, she noticed Stella's antennae perking up. The Tellarite girl crawled over, her eyes fixed on Sarah's tablet. "What is it?" Sarah asked, tilting the screen toward Stella. To her surprise, Stella reached out and rearranged the numbers on the screen, with surprising dexterity. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized Stella had solved the equation. "How did you do that?" Sarah exclaimed, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. Over the next few hours, Sarah discovered that Stella had an uncanny ability to recognize and manipulate patterns. With Stella's help, Sarah breezed through her assignments, and for the first time since the Tellurite girl had arrived, Sarah found herself genuinely enjoying Stella's company. Later that day, Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived to conduct further medical examinations on Stella. As she worked, she explained her findings to Joseph and Sarah. "Stella's genetic condition is unique," Dr. Rodriguez said, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. "I've identified several key nutrients that could potentially improve her mobility and speech." Joseph leaned forward, his fatigue momentarily forgotten. "Can we synthesize these nutrients here on the outpost?" Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "It's possible, but it will require some creative bioengineering. I've already spoken with the botanical team about modifying some of our crops." While Joseph threw himself into the task of synthesizing the nutrients, working long hours with the outpost botanists, Sarah found herself spending more time with Stella. She began researching Tellurite culture and language, determined to find better ways to communicate with her new companion. Using a combination of gestures and simple words, Sarah developed a rudimentary communication system. Stella picked it up quickly, her antennae twitching with excitement as they shared their first real conversation. However, not everyone on the outpost was supportive of their growing family unit. As Sarah walked Stella to Dr. Rodriguez's office for a checkup, she overheard whispers and saw disapproving looks from some of the other colonists. "Look at that," one of Sarah's classmates sneered as they passed. "Looks like Sarah's got herself an alien pet." Sarah felt her cheeks burn with anger, but before she could respond, she felt Stella's hand slip into hers. Looking down, she saw purpose in the young Tellurite's eyes. In that moment, Sarah realized that Stella wasn't just some alien intruder. She was family. As the 48-hour mark approached, tensions on the outpost continued to rise. Joseph was summoned to a meeting with Admiral Walker, who looked grave as Joseph entered his office. "Russell," Walker said, his voice low, "I'm implementing additional security measures for your family. There's been unrest among some of the Tellurite factions." Joseph felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of unrest?" Walker's expression darkened. "Nothing concrete yet, but we're taking precautions. I'm assigning Lieutenant Commander Jackson to your family's protection." As Joseph left the Admiral's office, his mind raced with the implications of this new development. He knew the path ahead would be challenging, but he was determined to keep his newfound family together. Returning to their quarters, Joseph found Sarah and Stella huddled over a datapad, giggling as they practiced their new communication system. The sight brought a smile to his weary face, reinforcing his commitment. Tomorrow, they would face the Tribunal and fight for their future together. But for now, in this moment of shared laughter and understanding, Joseph allowed himself to hope that they had already taken the first steps towards becoming a true family. The next morning, Joseph woke early, his mind already racing with preparations for the Tribunal. He found Sarah and Stella in the living area, huddled over a datapad, practicing their makeshift sign language. "Ready for today?" Joseph asked, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. Sarah nodded, her face set with tenacity. Stella's antennae twitched, picking up on the tension in the room. As they made their way to the hearing chamber, Joseph noticed the increased security presence. Lieutenant Commander Jackson fell into step beside them, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The Tribunal room buzzed with activity as they entered. Joseph's gaze swept across the panel of judges, 3 humans and 2 Tellurites, before settling on Admiral Marcus Walker at the center. Ambassador Grocknack, the Tellurite representative, sat to one side, his expression unreadable. Joseph's lawyer, Erica Summers, approached them. "Remember, stay calm and let me do the talking," she whispered before taking her place. As the hearing began, Joseph felt Sarah's hand slip into his. Stella sat between them, her small form tense with anticipation. Erica Summers presented their case with precision, outlining the events of the past 2 days. Joseph's chest swelled with pride as she described their efforts to care for Stella. Dr. Elena Rodriguez took the stand next, her voice clear and confident as she explained Stella's unique medical needs. "Mr. Russell has shown remarkable dedication," she said, gesturing to Joseph. "He worked tirelessly with our botanists to synthesize the nutrients Stella requires." Joseph noticed several judges nodding, but Ambassador Grocknack's frown deepened. As Grocknack rose to present the Tellurite argument, Joseph felt a knot form in his stomach. The ambassador's words were measured but forceful, emphasizing the importance of cultural preservation. "Furthermore," Grocknack announced, his voice rising, "a Tellurite family has come forward, offering to adopt Stella and return her to our society." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Joseph felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. He glanced at Sarah, seeing his own shock mirrored in her eyes. The hearing continued, a blur of arguments and counter-arguments. Joseph barely registered the passage of time until he heard Sarah's name called to testify. Sarah stood, her shoulders squared as she approached the stand. She demonstrated the communication system she had developed with Stella, her hands moving in a graceful dance of gestures. Stella, picking up on her cue, responded with a series of chirps and movements. The judges leaned forward, clearly impressed by their interaction. As Sarah returned to her seat, Lieutenant Commander Jackson stepped forward unexpectedly. "Your Honors, if I may address the tribunal?" Admiral Walker nodded, and Jackson recounted the attempted kidnapping by Tellurite extremists. Joseph hadn't heard the full story, and he felt a chill run down his spine as Jackson described Sarah and Stella's quick thinking in evading their pursuers. The tribunal called for a recess, and Joseph led his family out into the corridor. The atmosphere outside was charged with tension. A crowd had gathered, divided into 2 factions, those supporting the adoption and those opposing it. "Stay close," Jackson warned, positioning himself between the family and the crowd. As they re-entered the chamber, Joseph could see the strain on Admiral Walker's face. The judge's announcement of a 3-day adjournment was met with a mix of relief and frustration. But before Joseph could process this development, Ambassador Grocknack stood. The Tellurite government formally requests Stella's immediate return, citing the Interstellar Cooperation Treaty of 2184, Article 7, Section 3. The chamber erupted into chaos. Joseph instinctively pulled Sarah and Stella closer, his heart pounding. He watched as Admiral Walker's expression shifted from surprise to deep concentration. After a tense moment, Walker raised his hand for silence. "In light of these extraordinary circumstances, I propose an alternative solution." The room fell quiet as Walker outlined his plan. A 1-month trial period on a neutral planet, under observation from both human and Tellurite representatives. Joseph's mind raced. It wasn't ideal, but it was a chance, perhaps their only chance. He locked eyes with Sarah, seeing the same drive in her gaze. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. "We accept." Ambassador Grocknack looked ready to object, but after a hurried conversation with his aides, he grudgingly agreed to the terms. The next 24 hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Joseph coordinated with Dr. Rodriguez on medical supplies, while Sarah helped Stella pack, using their sign language to explain what was happening. As they boarded the small transport vessel, Joseph felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Sarah gripped his hand tightly, while Stella's antennae quivered with excitement at the new surroundings. Lieutenant Commander Jackson performed a final security sweep before giving the all-clear. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Joseph looked out at the gathered crowd, a sea of mixed emotions and divided loyalties. The vessel lifted off, leaving the space station behind. As they accelerated towards their uncertain future, Joseph gazed at Sarah and Stella, his newfound family. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The stars streaked past the view screen as the ship entered warp, carrying them towards the remote terraforming outpost that would be their home for the next month. Joseph knew that every moment of their time they would be scrutinized, their actions potentially shaping the future of interspecies relations. As the familiar backdrop of the space station faded from view, replaced by the vast expanse of space, Joseph felt a strange mix of apprehension and hope. The true test of their family bond was about to begin, with the eyes of two worlds upon them. As the ship emerged from warp, a rugged, mountainous landscape filled the view screen. Joseph felt Sarah's grip tighten on his hand as they gazed upon their new home for the next month. The transport vessel touched down on a makeshift landing pad near the terraforming outpost. As the airlock hissed open, Joseph took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The air that rushed in was thin and crisp, carrying the scent of unfamiliar vegetation. "Welcome to Outpost Delta," a stern-faced woman greeted them as they disembarked. "I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez. This is my Tellarite colleague, Dr. Grok." The Tellarite doctor nodded curtly, his eyes fixed on Stella. Joseph noticed Sarah instinctively moving closer to the young girl. Lieutenant Commander Jackson stepped forward, his posture alert. "I'll need a full layout of the facility to establish security protocols." As they were led towards the outpost, Joseph took in their surroundings. The facility was a collection of prefabricated structures nestled in a narrow valley, dwarfed by towering, jagged peaks on all sides. The harsh beauty of the landscape was tempered by an underlying sense of isolation. Inside the main building, they were shown to their living quarters, a sparse room with basic furnishings. Sarah immediately set about making the space more comfortable for Stella, arranging the few personal items they had brought. Dr. Rodriguez wasted no time in setting up her equipment in the small medical bay. "We'll need to run a full diagnostic on Stella," she explained, her voice softening as she addressed the young Tellarite. "It's crucial we monitor how she adapts to this environment." The first few days were a whirlwind of activity. Joseph found himself constantly occupied with maintaining and improving the outpost life support systems. The facility's infrastructure was rudimentary at best, and he often worked late into the night, making adjustments to compensate for the planet's unpredictable weather patterns. One evening, as Joseph tinkered with the atmospheric regulators, a low rumble shook the building. Sarah burst into the room, her eyes wide with concern. "Another storm," Joseph said, his voice tight. "The fourth one this week." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "Stella's been having trouble sleeping through them. I think the sound bothers her antennae." Joseph ran a hand through his hair, fatigue etched on his face. "I'll see if I can reinforce the insulation in her room. Maybe that'll help dampen the noise." As the days passed, they fell into a routine. Sarah devoted herself to helping Stella acclimate, using their improvised sign language to explain their situation and surroundings. Joseph often found them huddled together over datapads, Sarah patiently teaching Stella about their new home. One afternoon, Joseph entered their quarters to find Sarah and Stella kneeling on the floor, surrounded by small plants in makeshift containers. "What's all this?" he asked, a smile tugging at his lips. Sarah looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. "We're starting an indoor garden. Dr. Rodriguez said it might help provide some of the nutrients Stella needs." Joseph watched as Stella carefully patted soil around a seedling, her antennae twitching with concentration. For a moment, the challenges they faced seemed to fade away, replaced by a sense of purpose and unity. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the arrival of Grackner, a Tellarite observer sent to assess the situation. His constant presence added an extra layer of tension to their already stressful circumstances. The child should be with her own kind, Grackner grumbled one day, watching as Sarah helped Stella with her exercises. How can you possibly understand her needs? Sarah's teeth gritted, but she kept her voice level. We're learning together every day. Stella is part of our family now. Grackner snorted derisively, but said nothing more. As they approached the midpoint of their trial period, Joseph felt a growing sense of unease. They had made progress. Certainly. Stella's health had improved, and their bond as a family had strengthened. But would it be enough to convince the Tribunal? His thoughts were interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the entire outpost. Alarms blared as the lights flickered and went out. Earthquake! Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice crackled over the comm system. Everyone to safety positions. Joseph's heart raced as he sprinted towards their quarters, dodging falling debris. He found Sarah shielding Stella with her body as the room shook around them. We need to get to the central operations room, he shouted over the noise. It's the most structurally sound part of the outpost. As they made their way through the chaos, Joseph's mind whirled with the enormity of the challenge they now faced. The outpost lay in ruins around them, and he knew that their real test was just beginning. With Stella's care compromised and their safety in jeopardy, they would have to draw on every ounce of their strength and ingenuity to survive, and to prove once and for all that they could be the family Stella needed. Needs. With Stella's care compromised and their safety in jeopardy, they would have to draw on every ounce of their strength and ingenuity to survive, and to prove once and for all that they could be the family Stella needed. The central operations room buzzed with activity as Joseph, Sarah, and Stella huddled together, surrounded by the chaos of the earthquake's aftermath. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Grock moved swiftly among the injured, while Lieutenant Commander Jackson coordinated rescue efforts. Status report. Jackson barked into his communicator. Main power grid is down, a technician responded, her voice crackling through static. Backup generators are online, but struggling. Joseph's mind raced. He knew the outpost systems were now more critical than ever for Stella's well-being. Without a word, he squeezed Sarah's hand and made his way to the nearest console. I'm going to try to stabilize the life support systems, he called out, fingers flying across the interface. Sarah nodded, holding Stella close. The young Tellaride's antennae twitched nervously, sensing the tension in the room. As the days passed, the true extent of the damage became clear. The outpost, once a bastion of safety on this inhospitable world, now teetered on the brink of collapse. Joseph threw himself into the repair efforts, often working through the night to reinforce weakened structures and patch failing systems. One evening, as he welded a crack in the main habitat's outer wall, Dr. Rodriguez approached him. Joseph, she said, her voice tinged with concern, you need to rest. He shook his head, not looking up from his work. I can't. Not until I know we're safe. Dr. Rodriguez placed a hand on his shoulder. Your dedication is admirable. Both Dr. Grock and I have noticed. But you're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. Joseph paused, considering her words. He glanced through a nearby viewport, catching sight of Sarah and Stella in their makeshift living quarters. Sarah was using their sign language to explain something to Stella, who watched with rapt attention. All right, he conceded. I'll take a short break. As Joseph focused on repairing the outpost infrastructure, Sarah found herself taking on increased responsibilities in Stella's care. The loss of specialized medical equipment during the quake had made managing Stella's unique health needs more challenging. One afternoon, as Sarah helped Stella with her exercises, she noticed the young Tellarite suddenly become agitated. Stella's antennae began to quiver, and she made a series of urgent chirps. What is it, sweetheart? Sarah asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Before she could decipher Stella's response, the ground began to shake. Another aftershock rocked the outpost, sending loose items clattering to the floor. As the tremor subsided, Sarah's eyes widened with realization. "You knew it was coming, didn't you?" she asked Stella, who nodded emphatically. Sarah quickly sought out Lieutenant Commander Jackson, explaining what had happened. The security officer listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "If Stella can sense these quakes before they hit, it could be invaluable for our safety protocols," Jackson mused. "We need to find a way to integrate her warnings into our systems." Over the next few days, Sarah worked tirelessly with Jackson to develop a method of translating Stella's sensory input into actionable data. They created a simple interface that Stella could use to indicate the intensity and immediacy of an impending quake. As they fine-tuned the system, Grackner, the Tellurite observer, watched with growing interest. His initial skepticism seemed to be giving way to grudging respect. "I must admit," he grumbled one day, as Stella successfully predicted another aftershock, "I did not expect to see such ingenuity from a human-Tellurite partnership." Sarah smiled, recognizing the compliment hidden within Grackner's gruff demeanor. "We're learning to work together," she replied. "It's not always easy, but it's worth it." Grackner nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on Stella. Perhaps there is more to this arrangement than I initially thought." As the second half of their trial period began, a new challenge arose. A supply ship arrived, carrying desperately needed replacement medical equipment. However, as the ship touched down on the unstable landing pad, a critical piece of technology for Stella's treatment was damaged. Joseph, Dr. Rodriguez, and Dr. Grok gathered around the broken device, their faces grim. "Without this, we can't properly regulate Stella's unique nutrient intake," Dr. Rodriguez explained, her voice tight with frustration. Joseph studied the damaged components, his mind already racing through potential solutions. "What if," he began slowly, "we combine elements of Tellurite medical tech with our human equipment?" Dr. Grok's eyes widened. "A hybrid device? It's never been done before." "Exactly," Joseph replied, a determined glint in his eye. "But if we can pull it off, it might not only help Stella but pave the way for future medical advancements." The three of them set to work, their differing areas of expertise complementing each other as they tackled the complex task. Joseph's engineering skills meshed with Dr. Rodriguez's medical knowledge and Dr. Grok's understanding of Tellurite physiology. After days of tireless effort, they emerged from the makeshift lab, exhausted but triumphant. The hybrid device they had created not only met Stella's needs, but showed potential for broader applications in interspecies medicine. As news of their achievement spread, Joseph and Sarah found themselves thrust into an unexpected spotlight. Media outlets from both human and Tellurite worlds began reporting on their unique situation, turning their private struggle into a public spectacle. "We're receiving requests for interviews," Lieutenant Commander Jackson informed them one morning, his expression neutral. "How do you want to handle this?" Joseph and Sarah exchanged a weary glance. They knew that their actions now could have far-reaching consequences, not just for their family, but for future interspecies relations. "We'll give a brief statement," Sarah decided, "but our focus needs to remain on Stella and our work here." As they prepared for the media onslaught, a new complication arose. Groznik, the leader of the Tellurite clan that had originally abandoned Stella, requested permission to visit the outpost. The news sent a ripple of tension through the family. Joseph paced the small confines of their quarters, his eyes hardened. "We can't trust him," he muttered. "What if he's here to take Stella away?" Sarah watched him, her own emotions conflicted. "We have to at least hear him out," she said softly. "For Stella's sake, we need to understand where she came from." As the day of Groznik's arrival approached, the atmosphere in the outpost grew increasingly tense. Joseph threw himself into preparations, double-checking security measures with Jackson and ensuring all of Stella's medical needs were covered. Sarah, meanwhile, focused on preparing Stella for the meeting. Using their sign language, she carefully explained who Groznyk was and why he was coming. "Remember," Sarah signed, her movements gentle but firm, "no matter what happens, you are part of our family now. We love you, and we'll always protect you." Stella's antennae quivered with a mix of anxiety and curiosity as she absorbed Sarah's words. As Groznyk's shuttle touched down on the newly reinforced landing pad, Joseph and Sarah stood side by side, Stella between them. They watched as the Tellarite clan leader emerged, his expression unreadable. The moment hung in the air, fraught with potential. Joseph felt Sarah's hand slip into his, squeezing tightly. Whatever came next, they would face it together as a family. Groznyk approached slowly, his eyes fixed on Stella. The young Tellarite's antennae twitched nervously, but she stood her ground, flanked by her human parents. "Greetings," Groznyk rumbled, his voice carrying a weight of unspoken emotions. "I have come a long way to see you, young one." As Stella tentatively raised her hand in the greeting Sarah had taught her, Joseph and Sarah exchanged a glance. They knew that this meeting could change everything, for their family, for interspecies relations, and for the future of both their worlds. The air crackled with tension as Groznyk took another step forward, his eyes never leaving Stella's face. The true test of their family's bond was about to begin. The tension in the air was palpable as Groznyk stood before them, his eyes fixed on Stella. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shattered the moment. Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, report to Central Operations immediately. We have an emergency situation." Joseph and Sarah exchanged worried glances. "We need to go," Joseph said, addressing Groznyk. "This meeting will have to wait." As they hurried to Central Operations, Joseph's mind raced with possibilities. What new challenge could they be facing now? The operations room was a flurry of activity when they arrived. Dr. Alara Voss, the head of the evaluation team that had arrived earlier that day, stood at the center of the chaos, her usually calm demeanor visibly shaken. "A massive solar flare has been detected," she announced as Joseph, Sarah, and Stella joined the group. "It's interfering with the planet's magnetic field, causing widespread communication disruptions and power fluctuations. We're going to be here longer than anticipated." Joseph's engineering instincts kicked in immediately. He stepped forward, addressing the room. "We need to fortify our power systems and shield our sensitive equipment from the electromagnetic interference. I can lead a team to implement the necessary modifications." Dr. Voss nodded, a flicker of approval in her eyes. "Excellent, Mr. Reeves. Please proceed." As Joseph gathered a team of engineers, Sarah took stock of their situation. With communications down and their stay extended indefinitely, they would need to manage their resources carefully. "I'll organize a rationing system," Sarah volunteered. "We need to ensure everyone's needs are met during this extended period." While the adults mobilized to address the crisis, Stella stood quietly, her antennae twitching nervously. Sarah knelt beside her, using their sign language to explain the situation. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she signed. "We're all working together to keep everyone safe." Stella nodded, her expression determined. She raised her hands, signing back, "I want to help too." Over the next few hours, the outpost transformed into a hive of activity. Joseph and his team worked tirelessly to reinforce the power grid, installing additional surge protectors and rerouting critical systems to more shielded areas. Sarah coordinated with the kitchen staff to implement her rationing plan, ensuring fair distribution of supplies. She also organized shifts for various tasks, making efficient use of their limited personnel. As night fell, a series of tremors shook the outpost. Stella's antennae began to quiver moments before each shake, her eyes widening in alarm. "Earthquake," she signed urgently to Sarah, who quickly relayed the warning to the rest of the team. Thanks to Stella's advance notice, they were able to secure loose equipment and brace themselves before each tremor hit. Dr. Voss watched in amazement as Stella's warnings repeatedly proved accurate. "Fascinating," she murmured, making notes on her datapad. Her seismic sensitivity could be invaluable in situations like this. As the days wore on, the prolonged isolation began to take its toll. Tensions rose between the human and Tellarite members of the evaluation team, with cultural misunderstandings leading to heated arguments. Joseph and Sarah found themselves stepping in as mediators, drawing on their experience in bridging the gap between human and Tellarite perspectives. "Look," Joseph said during one particularly tense moment, "we all want the same thing here, to get through this crisis safely. We're stronger working together than we are apart." Sarah nodded in agreement. "Each of our species has unique strengths. If we combine them, there's no challenge we can't overcome." Their words seemed to resonate with both groups, and slowly, a more collaborative atmosphere began to emerge. Human ingenuity meshed with Tellarite stubbornness, resulting in creative solutions to the problems they faced. One evening, as Joseph was running diagnostics on the hybrid medical device they had created for Stella, he noticed Dr. Grok, looking particularly distressed. "Is everything all right, Doctor?" Joseph asked, concern evident in his voice. Dr. Grok sighed heavily. "The communication blackout. I was expecting important news from my family back home. Not knowing is difficult." Joseph nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Why don't you join Sarah and me for Stella's evening routine? It might help take your mind off things." Dr. Grok hesitated for a moment before accepting the invitation. As he participated in Stella's care, helping with her exercises and joining in their nightly story time, a noticeable change came over the Tellarite doctor. His gruff exterior softened, and he began to see firsthand the deep bond that had formed between the human parents and their Tellarite child. As the solar flare's effects began to wane, Dr. Voss announced a series of stress tests to assess the family's ability to handle crisis situations. Joseph, Sarah, and Stella worked seamlessly together, their teamwork and communication skills impressing both the human and Tellarite observers. During one simulation, Stella's enhanced mobility thanks to the hybrid medical device allowed her to reach a control panel that the adults couldn't access, averting a simulated disaster. The pride on Joseph and Sarah's faces was mirrored by the impressed looks from the evaluation team. As Dr. Voss prepared to compile her final report, news arrived that their story had gained significant attention back on Earth and Tellar Prime. The family's unique situation and their performance during the crisis had captured the public imagination, sparking debates about the future of human-Tellarite relations. "This changes things," Dr. Voss admitted, her expression thoughtful. "Your case has implications far beyond just your family now. I'll need additional time to consult with authorities from both worlds before making my final recommendation." As the family awaited the decision that would determine their future, they realized that their journey had become about much more than just their personal happiness. They had become a symbol of hope for a future where humans and Tellarites could not only coexist, but thrive together. Joseph and Sarah tucked Stella into bed that night, their minds whirling with the possibilities that lay ahead. As they watched their daughter drift off to sleep, they knew that whatever challenges they might face, they would face them together as a family. Family, the weight of their responsibility, both to Stella and to the future of human-Tellarite relations, settled over them like a protective blanket. Their moment of peace was short-lived. A violent tremor shook the outpost, more powerful than any they had experienced before. Alarms blared as Joseph and Sarah rushed to check on Stella, who was already signing frantically. "Big storm coming," she warned, her antennae vibrating intensely. Joseph's communicator chirped urgently. "Reeves, we need you in the control room now." Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice crackled through the static. As they hurried through the corridors, the outpost systems flickered ominously. In the control room, a holographic display showed a massive swirling mass approaching the planet. Dr. Voss turned to them, her face grave. An ion storm, triggered by the solar flare activity. It's unlike anything we've seen before. Joseph studied the readouts, his mind racing. The outpost systems won't withstand this level of electromagnetic interference. We'll be completely disabled. Sarah's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. We could be stranded here for months, maybe longer. A tense silence fell over the room as the reality of their situation sank in. Joseph's gaze fell on the shield generator controls, an idea forming. What if we modify the shield generators? He proposed. Create a protective dome around the entire facility? Dr. Voss looked skeptical. That's never been done before. The power requirements alone dash. We don't have a choice, Joseph interrupted. It's our only shot at surviving this storm. Over the next few hours, Joseph led a team of human and Tellarite engineers in a frantic race against time. They pushed the shield generators to their limits, reconfiguring systems and rerouting power. Sarah coordinated logistics, ensuring supplies reached the engineering team and overseeing the evacuation of non-essential areas. Stella, her sensitivity to electromagnetic fluctuations heightened by the approaching storm, provided crucial warnings about power surges and equipment failures. As the ion storm's outer edges reached the planet, Joseph activated the modified shield generators. A shimmering dome of energy slowly materialized around the outpost, the air crackling with static electricity. It's working, Dr. Grock muttered, his gruff voice tinged with awe. Their relief was short-lived. The shield generators groaned under the strain, alarms blaring as power fluctuations rippled through the system. We need to make constant manual adjustments to maintain the shield's integrity, Joseph realized. He quickly organized a rotation schedule, pairing humans and Tellarites together at each control station. Sarah worked with Stella to develop a warning system based on her unique abilities. Using a combination of sign language and simple light signals, Stella could alert the shield control teams to impending surges in the storm's intensity. The evaluation team, initially observers, found themselves drawn into the crisis management efforts. Dr. Voss worked alongside Sarah, her clinical detachment giving way to grudging respect for the family's resourcefulness. As the storm reached its peak, a critical shield generator began to fail. Sparks flew from the control panel as the engineering team scrambled to reroute power. We're losing the eastern sector, a Tellarite engineer shouted over the din. Joseph's mind raced, combining his knowledge of human engineering with what he had learned of Tellarite power distribution methods. Sarah, remember that hybrid power coupling we designed for Stella's medical device? Sarah's eyes lit up with understanding. If we scale it up, we might be able to stabilize the power flow. Together with Stella, they quickly sketched out a design, merging human and Tellarite technologies in a way never before attempted. As Joseph and the engineering team implemented their solution, Sarah and Stella monitored the power levels, their fingers flying in a flurry of sign communication. The shield stabilized just as the storm reached its zenith. For hours, the outpost shuddered under the onslaught of ionic energy, but the hybrid shield held firm. As the storm finally began to subside, exhausted crew members gathered in the control room. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt electronics, but a sense of triumph permeated the room. Dr. Voss stepped forward, her usual composure slightly ruffled. I've never seen anything quite like this, she admitted. Your family's ability to innovate under pressure is remarkable. Before Joseph or Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring once again. Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice came over the intercom, tight with concern. We have a new problem. The storm has severely damaged our food production systems. At current consumption rates, we have less than 2 weeks of supplies left. The brief moment of victory evaporated as the reality of their situation set in. They had survived the storm, but a new challenge loomed on the horizon, threatening their very survival on this remote outpost. Joseph squeezed Sarah's hand, feeling Stella press close to their side. They exchanged a determined look, knowing that once again, they would face this challenge together, as a family, and as part of this unlikely community of humans and Tellarites united by adversity. As the gravity of their food shortage situation sank in, Joseph and Sarah exchanged worried glances. They had overcome the ion storm, but this new challenge threatened their very survival. Before they could fully process the implications, a distant rumble caught their attention. Stella's antennae twitched and she signed rapidly, "Ship's coming." Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice crackled over the intercom once more. "Incoming vessels detected. Multiple signatures. It's the diplomatic convoy." The tension in the control room shifted from despair to nervous anticipation. The arrival of high-ranking officials from both Earth and Tellar Prime had been expected, but the timing couldn't have been more precarious. "We need to prepare for their arrival," Dr. Voss stated, her professional demeanor reasserting itself. "Reeves, I want you and your family to join the welcoming committee. Your unique situation is central to these proceedings." As they made their way to the docking bay, Joseph and Sarah hurriedly straightened their uniforms and helped Stella adjust her specially designed outfit. The little Tellarite girl's eyes were wide with excitement and apprehension. The docking bay doors slid open, revealing a procession of dignitaries. At the forefront stood Admiral Walker, his weathered face set in a stern expression. Beside him, the imposing figure of Grolinke, the Tellarite diplomat, surveyed the room with barely concealed skepticism. Joseph stepped forward, offering a formal salute to Admiral Walker before extending his hand in the traditional Tellarite greeting to Grolinke. "Welcome to Outpost 37, distinguished guests. I'm Lieutenant Joseph Reeves, and this is my family." Sarah nodded respectfully, while Stella signed a greeting, her small hands moving with practiced precision. Admiral Walker's eyebrows rose slightly. "So, this is the family we've heard so much about. I must say, seeing you in person is quite something." Grolinke grunted, his beady eyes fixed on Stella. "The child appears healthy, at least, but appearances can be deceiving." Before tensions could escalate, Lieutenant Commander Jackson intervened. "Perhaps we should move this to the conference room. There's much to discuss, including some recent developments that require immediate attention." As they walked, Joseph found himself alongside Admiral Walker. "Sir, I should inform you that we've just weathered a severe ion storm. Our outpost sustained damage, particularly to our food production systems." The Admiral's frown deepened. "I see. It seems we have more to discuss than initially planned." In the conference room, Joseph presented a comprehensive report on the family's progress and the crises they'd overcome. He emphasized the practical benefits of human-Tellarite cooperation, using examples from their hybrid technologies and problem-solving methods. "The modified shield generators that protected us during the ion storm were a direct result of combining human and Tellarite engineering principles," Joseph explained, bringing up a holographic display of the system. Sarah chimed in, describing their communication system. "We've developed a unique sign language that incorporates elements of both human and Tellarite nonverbal communication. It's allowed us to bridge the gap between our species in ways we never anticipated." To demonstrate, Stella stepped forward, her antennae quivering slightly as she signed a complex series of gestures. Sarah translated. "Stella says she's honored to meet you all and hopes you'll see that love knows no species." A murmur ran through the assembled officials. Even Grolinke seemed momentarily taken aback by the child's eloquence. Admiral Walker leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Impressive. And you say this hybrid approach has practical applications beyond your family unit?" Joseph nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. So the same principles that allowed us to create Stella's medical device have potential applications in various fields, from terraforming to space exploration. As the presentation continued, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The initial skepticism gave way to cautious interest, with both human and Tellarite officials asking probing questions about the family's experiences and innovations. However, just as it seemed progress was being made, Grohe raised his voice. This is all very fascinating, but it doesn't address a fundamental concern. What of the child's cultural identity? How can she truly understand her Tellarite heritage while being raised by humans? The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Joseph and Sarah. It was a question they had grappled with themselves, but hearing it voiced so bluntly by a high-ranking Tellarite official gave it new weight. Sarah stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. We've made every effort to incorporate Tellarite customs into our family life. We celebrate Tellarite holidays, read Tellarite literature, and even prepare traditional Tellarite meals. Joseph added, We've also been in regular contact with Tellarite cultural experts, ensuring that Stella receives a well-rounded education about her heritage. Grohe snorted unconvinced. Words are easy. Proof is another matter entirely. Before the situation could escalate further, Admiral Walker held up a hand. Perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong angle. Instead of focusing on potential problems, we should be looking at opportunities. He turned to address the room at large. What we have here is unprecedented. A successful blending of human and Tellarite cultures at the most fundamental level, the family unit. Instead of questioning its validity, we should be exploring how to build upon it. The Admiral's words seemed to resonate with many in the room, but Grohe remained skeptical. As the diplomatic delegation broke for a recess, Joseph and Sarah exchanged worried glances. They had made progress, but the future of their family and potentially human Tellarite relations as a whole still hung in the balance. As they left the conference room, a low rumble shook the outpost. Stella's antennae began to vibrate intensely, and she signed urgently to her parents. Joseph's eyes widened as he translated for the others. She says a major seismic event is coming. We need to prepare immediately. The diplomats looked alarmed, but Admiral Walker's expression was one of unshakable focus. It seems your family's abilities are about to be put to the test once again, Lieutenant Reeves. Let's see how you handle this crisis. Crisis, Admiral Walker commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. Lieutenant Reeves, what's our next move? Joseph snapped into action, years of training kicking in. We need to initiate emergency protocols immediately. Sarah, contact the engineering team. We'll need to reinforce the structural integrity field. As Sarah rushed to the communication panel, Joseph turned to Stella. Can you give us more details about what you're sensing? Stella's hands flew in a flurry of signs, her antennae quivering. Sarah translated rapidly. She says it's not just one event. There's a series of tremors building up, like a cascade effect. Grohe stepped forward, his earlier skepticism giving way to grudging respect. The child's abilities are impressive. We should heed her warning. Admiral Walker nodded in agreement. Absolutely. Commander Jackson, initiate a facility-wide alert. I want all non-essential personnel to report to designated safety zones. As the outpost erupted into controlled chaos, Joseph led the diplomatic delegation to the control room. Screens flickered to life, displaying real-time seismic data that corroborated Stella's predictions. The epicenter seems to be about 20 kilometers southwest of our location, Joseph explained, pointing to a pulsing red dot on the map. But the tremors are propagating in our direction. Dr. Voss, who had joined them in the control room, frowned at the readings. These patterns are unlike anything we've seen before. It's as if the planet's crust is restructuring itself. The first tremor hit, a low rumble that quickly intensified. The outpost shuddered, lights flickering ominously. Stella clung to Sarah, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and concentration as she continued to sense the planet's movements. Structural integrity is holding at 92%, a Tellurite engineer reported. But we're detecting stress fractures in the eastern quadrant. Joseph's mind raced, combining his knowledge of terraforming with the unique challenges of this alien world. We need to find a way to dissipate the seismic energy before it reaches us. Sarah, remember that paper we read about harmonic resonance in planetary crusts? Sarah's eyes lit up with understanding. You think we could adapt that principle to our shield generators? It's worth a shot, Joseph nodded. We'll need to recalibrate the emitters to match the frequency of the tremors. As they worked feverishly to implement their plan, the tremors intensified. Equipment rattled, and the sound of groaning metal filled the air. Stella suddenly signed urgently, her movements sharp and insistent. She says there's a big one coming, Sarah translated, her voice tight with tension. We have less than 5 minutes. Admiral Walker stepped in, his command presence filling the room. Whatever you're going to do, Reeves, do it fast. We're running out of time. Joseph and Sarah, working in perfect sync, made the final adjustments to the shield generators. As the largest tremor yet began to build, Joseph activated the modified system. A low hum filled the air as the generators came to life. The outpost vibrated, but this time it was different, a controlled, rhythmic pulsing that seemed to push back against the planet's violent shaking. For several tense moments, it seemed as if the entire world was holding its breath. Then, gradually, the tremors began to subside. The red warning lights on the control panels faded to amber, then green. It's working, Dr. Voss breathed, her usual composure slipping to reveal a moment of awe. The seismic energy is being redirected and dispersed. As the crisis passed, a palpable sense of relief washed over the control room. Admiral Walker turned to Joseph and Sarah, his expression a mix of admiration and curiosity. Impressive work, both of you. I think it's clear that your unique perspective and problem-solving abilities are invaluable to this outpost. Galactic grunted in agreement. Perhaps there is more to learn from this human-Tellurite collaboration than we initially thought. As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, Joseph and Sarah exchanged a weary but triumphant look. They had overcome yet another challenge, but both knew that this was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, news of the outpost's innovative solution to the seismic crisis spread rapidly. Scientists and researchers from both Earth and Tellar Prime clamored for more information, eager to study the hybrid technologies and unique problem-solving approaches developed by the Reeves family. The once quiet outpost soon became a hub of activity. Shuttles arrived daily, bringing teams of geologists, engineers, and diplomats. Joseph found himself working long hours, explaining their modified shield generators and discussing potential applications for other unstable planets. Sarah took on the role of cultural liaison, guiding the new arrivals through the intricacies of human-Tellurite cooperation. Her patience and understanding helped smooth over countless misunderstandings and cultural faux pas. Stella, initially excited by the influx of new faces, soon found the constant attention overwhelming. Her unique abilities made her a subject of fascination for many of the visiting scientists, who were eager to study her seismic predictions. One evening, as Joseph and Sarah were preparing dinner in their quarters, they noticed Stella's unusually subdued demeanor. The little Tellurite girl's antennae drooped slightly, and her usual enthusiastic signing was replaced by short, perfunctory responses. "Sweetie, is everything okay?" Sarah asked, kneeling down to Stella's level. Stella's hands moved slowly as she signed. Tired. Too many people. Too many questions. Joseph and Sarah exchanged concerned glances. They had been so caught up in the whirlwind of activity that they hadn't fully considered the impact on their daughter. "We need to establish some boundaries," Joseph said firmly. "Stella's well-being has to come first." Sarah nodded in agreement. "I'll speak with Dr. Voss tomorrow about implementing a more structured schedule for the research teams. We can't have them monopolizing Stella's time like this. Double time, people," Joseph shouted, urging the team forward. "The bridge is destabilizing." As the last team member reached the safety of the other side, Joseph remained behind, manually adjusting the alien controls to maintain the bridge's integrity. The chamber shook violently, large chunks of rock crashing down around him. "Joseph, what are you doing?" Sarah's voice was filled with panic. "Get out of there now." "I have to keep the bridge stable," he replied, his fingers dancing across the alien interface. "If it collapses now, we'll be trapped on opposite sides of the chasm. Go, get everyone to the vehicles. I'll be right behind you." Sarah protested, but Joseph cut her off. "There's no time to argue. Go!" As Sarah reluctantly led the team towards the exit, Lieutenant Commander Jackson approached Joseph. "I'm staying to help," he said firmly. "We'll find a way to stabilize this thing and get out together." Joseph nodded gratefully, and together they worked to maintain the failing energy bridge. The cavern's instability increased with each passing moment, larger sections of the ceiling beginning to cave in around them. Jackson surveyed their surroundings, his military training kicking in. "We need an extraction plan," he muttered, eyes darting between the unstable bridge and the distant exit where the rest of the team had disappeared. Thinking quickly, Jackson began to gather discarded equipment from the team's initial survey. "I've got an idea," he said, his voice tight with concentration. "We can create a makeshift zip line across the chasm. It's risky, but it might be our only shot if this bridge goes down." As Jackson worked on the improvised rescue line, Sarah's voice came through the communication device once more. "Joseph, we've been analyzing the alien technology's power source," she said, her tone urgent but focused. "The Tellarite experts think we've found a way to boost its output temporarily. It could stabilize the bridge long enough for you to escape." Joseph's eyes lit up with hope, but Sarah continued, her voice grave. "There's a catch. The power boost could trigger a catastrophic overload. If that happens, the entire cavern system might collapse." Before Joseph could respond, Stella's urgent signing came through the device. Sarah translated quickly. Stella's detected a pattern in the cave-ins. "She's predicting a brief window of stability coming up. It might be our best chance to attempt a rescue." Joseph looked at Jackson, who nodded grimly. "It's now or never," the lieutenant commander said, securing the last component of the makeshift zipline. "All right," Joseph replied, steeling himself for what was to come. "Sarah, tell me when to initiate the power boost. Jackson, be ready with that zipline. We'll only have one shot at this." As they waited for Stella's predicted window of stability, Joseph's mind raced through everything that had led them to this moment. The excitement of the expedition, the discovery of the alien structure, and now the desperate fight for survival. Whatever the outcome, he knew their findings would change everything, if they could make it out alive to share them. The communication device crackled to life once more, Sarah's voice cutting through the rumble of the collapsing cavern. "Now, Joseph, initiate the power boost." With a deep breath, Joseph activated the sequence they had discovered. The alien technology hummed to life, energy surging through the ancient systems. The bridge stabilized, its light growing stronger and more constant. "It's working," Joseph shouted to Jackson. "Let's move." They abandoned the alien controls and raced across the chasm. The bridge held firm under their feet, but Joseph could feel the energy building to dangerous levels behind them. They reached the zipline just as the bridge began to disintegrate, its light flickering and fading. Jackson secured himself to the zipline first, gliding across the chasm with practiced ease. As Joseph prepared to follow, a massive tremor shook the cavern. The ancient alien structure started to crumble, releasing a surge of unknown energy that interacted violently with the unstable mineral deposits. With no time to spare, Joseph clipped on a zipline and launched himself into the void. As he glided across the chasm, the energy bridge collapsed entirely, vaporizing in a blinding flash of light. The cavern walls groaned and buckled, the chain reaction spreading rapidly through the cave system. Joseph landed roughly on the other side, Jackson already helping him to his feet. "We need to move now," Jackson urged, pulling Joseph towards the exit where the rest of the team waited. As they raced through the collapsing tunnels, Joseph's mind shifted into overdrive. His terraforming experience, combined with Stella's continued seismic predictions relayed through Sarah, allowed him to guide the team through the chaos. They dodged falling debris and navigated around cave-ins, the roar of the collapsing caverns growing louder with each passing moment. Finally, they reached the main shaft leading to the surface, only to find their path blocked by a massive cave-in. The team's faces fell as they realized their primary escape route was cut off. Joseph's eyes darted around the tunnel, his mind racing to find a solution. Suddenly, he remembered a detail from their initial descent. "The ventilation shaft," he said, his voice cutting through the team's panicked murmurs. "We passed a narrow shaft earlier that might lead to the surface. It's our only chance now." As the team processed this information, Joseph knew they faced a difficult decision. The ventilation shaft was too small for their vehicles and most of their equipment. They would have to abandon nearly everything they had brought with them. "Listen up, everyone," Joseph called out, his voice firm and decisive. "We're going to have to leave the vehicles and most of our gear behind. Grab only essential supplies and any samples we've collected from the alien structure. We need to move fast." The team sprang into action, quickly gathering what they could carry. Sarah ensured they had the most crucial data and samples from their discovery, while Jackson organized the group for a swift ascent. As they prepared to enter the narrow ventilation shaft, Joseph took one last look at the caverns that had nearly become their tomb. The alien structure, the mineral deposits, the energy bridge, all of it would soon be lost, buried beneath tons of rock and earth. But the knowledge they had gained, the samples they carried, and the team's survival were what truly mattered now. With a nod to Sarah and Jackson, Joseph turned to face the ventilation shaft. "All right, team," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Let's get out of here." One by one, they began their ascent through the cramped passage, leaving behind the mysteries of the deep and racing against time towards the surface and safety. Safety and the promise of escape. The narrow passage seemed to stretch endlessly upward, its walls pressing in on all sides as they climbed. The team's labored breathing and the scraping of their gear against rock echoed in the confined space. As they ascended, Joseph's mind raced, calculating their progress and estimating the distance to the surface. The shaft grew increasingly unstable, with small chunks of debris raining down on them from above. The air became thick with dust, making each breath a struggle. Suddenly, their upward progress halted. Joseph, at the head of the group, found himself face to face with a solid mass of rock and debris blocking their path. The ventilation shaft's exit was sealed shut. "We're blocked," Joseph called down to the others, his voice tight with urgency. "Everyone hold position." Sarah climbed up to join him, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "What are we dealing with?" she asked, examining the obstruction. Joseph ran his hands over the debris, his mind already formulating potential solutions. "It's a mix of rock and collapsed structural materials. Our standard equipment won't be enough to break through." The team exchanged worried glances, the reality of their situation sinking in. They were trapped, with the unstable cavern system threatening to collapse beneath them at any moment. Joseph's eyes fell on the alien technology they had salvaged from the underground structure. An idea began to form in his mind, born of desperation and innovation. "Sarah, hand me your communication device," he said, his voice taking on a focused edge. "I think I might have a way out of this." As Sarah passed him her device, Joseph began to disassemble it, combining its components with fragments of the alien tech. His fingers moved with practiced precision, guided by years of engineering experience and the urgency of their situation. "What are you doing?" Lieutenant Commander Jackson asked, watching Joseph work. "Creating a makeshift sonic emitter," Joseph replied, not looking up from his task. "If I can get this to work, it should be able to weaken the rock structure enough for us to break through." Sarah's eyes widened with understanding. "But won't the vibrations risk causing more cave-ins?" Joseph nodded grimly. "It's a risk we'll have to take. It's our only shot at getting out of here." As Joseph and Sarah worked on the device, Jackson organized the rest of the team. "All right, people, let's reinforce our position. Use whatever we have left. Equipment cases, fabric from the packs, anything that can provide some protection from falling debris." The Tellarite mining experts, led by Galactic, huddled together, examining the rock formation around them. Their keen eyes and experienced hands traced the contours of the shaft, identifying potential weak points. "Here," Galactic said, pointing to a section of the debris. "This area shows signs of stress fractures." As Joseph contemplated the challenges ahead, a series of alarms blared through the control room, jolting him back to the present crisis. "Status report," he called out, rushing to the main console where technicians frantically worked to stabilize the systems. A young engineer looked up, her face pale with concern. "Sir, we're losing control of primary life support. Environmental systems are fluctuating wildly, and we can't pinpoint the source of the interference." Joseph's mind raced, connecting the dots between the malfunctioning equipment and the alien artifacts they'd been studying. "It has to be related to the technology we've awakened," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Galactic stepped forward, his Tellarite features set in a determined scowl. "We need to trace the energy signatures. If these malfunctions are linked to the alien artifacts, there must be a central point of origin." Nodding in agreement, Joseph assembled a small team of human and Tellarite scientists. They worked tirelessly, following the complex web of energy fluctuations throughout the outpost. After hours of meticulous analysis, they discovered a pattern in the chaos, a series of energy pulses that seemed to converge on a single point within the alien structure. "Look at this," Joseph said, pointing to a holographic display of the structure. "These energy signatures form a kind of key. I think they're leading us somewhere." With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Joseph led the team to the alien structure. They carefully manipulated the artifacts they had retrieved, using them to emit the specific energy signatures they had identified. As the last pulse was sent, a section of the wall shimmered and dissolved, revealing a hidden chamber. The team cautiously entered the newly discovered area, their handheld scanners beeping urgently as they detected a surge of unfamiliar energy. In the center of the chamber stood an imposing construct, an alien computer system that pulsed with an otherworldly light. "This is it," Joseph breathed, approaching the ancient machine. "This must be the source of our problems. It's tried to interface with our systems, but the technologies are incompatible." As Joseph began the delicate process of deciphering the alien operating system, Sarah's voice came through his communicator, tinged with a mixture of concern and excitement. "Joseph, you need to hear this," she said. "We've been running tests on Stella's abilities, and, well, it's extraordinary. She can detect and interpret a much wider range of electromagnetic frequencies than our instruments. She's actually able to sense the alien technology in ways we can't." Joseph's eyes widened as he processed this information. "That's incredible, Sarah. We might need Stella's help to understand the system fully." But for now, keep her safe. We don't know what other effects this technology might have. As Joseph and his team worked to decipher the alien computer, they made slow but steady progress. Hours passed as they carefully navigated the complex alien logic structures, each breakthrough bringing them closer to understanding the system's purpose. Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed through the chamber. Joseph stumbled back from the console, his heart racing as he realized he had inadvertently triggered something within the system. "Everyone out now!" he shouted, but it was too late. A blinding flash enveloped the outpost, and when it faded, Joseph knew immediately that something had changed. He rushed to the nearest window, his breath catching in his throat as he saw a shimmering energy field surrounding the entire facility. Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice crackled over the comm system, his tone urgent but controlled. "Attention all personnel. We are implementing emergency protocols. The outpost has been cut off from external communication and is currently encased in an unknown energy field. Please remain calm and report to your designated crisis response teams." As Joseph made his way back to the control room, he could feel the change in the air, a subtle shift in pressure and composition that sent a chill down his spine. The life support systems were already being affected by the energy field. In the control room, he found General Marcus Blackwood and Tellarite War Chief Grocknack engaged in a heated discussion. Their argument fell silent as Joseph entered, both turning to him with expressions that demanded answers. "Dr. Thompson," Blackwood said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger, "what the hell is going on here?" Joseph took a deep breath, knowing that the next few moments would be crucial for the survival of everyone in the outpost, and potentially for the future of human-Tellarite relations. "Sir," he began, meeting the eyes of both leaders, "we've awakened something far beyond our current understanding, but I believe I know how to fix it. We need to work together, humans and Tellarites, if we're going to survive this." As Joseph explained his theory about the alien computer system and its connection to the energy field, he could see the gravity of the situation settling over Blackwood and Grocknack. The two leaders exchanged a look, years of mistrust and political maneuvering giving way to a shared understanding of the crisis at hand. "What do you need from us, Dr. Thompson?" Grocknack asked, his gruff voice carrying a note of respect that hadn't been there before. Joseph laid out his plan, knowing that every second counted as the outpost life support systems continued to degrade. "I need unrestricted access to all our resources and full cooperation between our teams. We're going to have to push our technology to its limits to interface with this alien system." As Blackwood and Grocknack nodded their agreement, Joseph turned to the communication panel. "Sarah, bring Stella to the control room. Her abilities might be our key to understanding this technology before it's too late." With the fate of the outpost hanging in the balance, Joseph prepared to dive back into the alien system. The real challenge was just beginning, and he knew that the next few hours would test not only his scientific skills, but also the newfound cooperation between humans and Tellarites. As the energy field pulsed ominously around them, Joseph steeled himself for the complex task ahead, knowing that failure was not an option. An option, the fate of the outpost, and perhaps the future of human-Tellarite relations, rested on his next actions. Joseph took a deep breath and turned to the assembled team. "We're going to attempt a controlled energy redistribution," he announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "It's risky, but it's our best chance to dissipate this field without causing catastrophic damage." As he began inputting commands into the alien computer system, the outpost suddenly shook violently. Alarms blared throughout the complex, their urgent wails adding to the chaos. "Status report," Lieutenant Commander Jackson shouted over the din. A technician's voice crackled through the comm system. "Multiple system failures detected. Structural integrity breaches in sectors 3 and 7. Joseph's fingers flew over the alien interface, his mind racing to adjust his calculations. The energy redistribution was causing unexpected reactions with the planet's unique mineral composition, amplifying the seismic activity and threatening to tear the outpost apart. "Sarah," he called out, "I need you and Stella to monitor the energy fluctuations. Stella's abilities might pick up on changes our instruments can't detect." Sarah nodded, guiding their daughter to a nearby console. Stella's eyes widened as she focused on the swirling patterns of energy only she could see. "Mom," she whispered, "it's like a giant angry storm." As Stella relayed her observations, Sarah quickly interpreted the data, feeding crucial updates to Joseph. Their seamless teamwork became the linchpin in managing the chaotic energy patterns. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Jackson and Grolac sprang into action, coordinating the outpost personnel. "Evacuate sectors 3 and 7 immediately," Jackson ordered. "Redirect all available power to reinforce critical areas." Grolac added, "Maintenance teams, focus on stabilizing life support systems. We can't afford to lose oxygen generation." As they worked, falling debris and malfunctioning equipment hampered their efforts. Jackson and Grolac found themselves making split-second decisions, weighing the risks of sending teams into unstable areas against the potential loss of vital systems. In the command center, General Marcus Blackwood and Tellarite War Chief Groknak stood side by side, their earlier animosity forgotten in the face of the current crisis. They watched in growing alarm as the external sensors picked up increased activity from the planet's native fauna. "The energy field's fluctuations are attracting them," Groknak growled. "We need to establish a perimeter defense." Blackwood nodded grimly. "Agreed. Let's coordinate our defensive systems. We can't afford to be overrun while we're dealing with this internal crisis." As the two leaders worked to protect the outpost from external threats, Dr. Elena Rodriguez burst into the command center, her eyes wide with excitement despite the chaos around her. "Dr. Thompson," she called out, "you need to see this. The energy field is causing rapid mutations in some of the indigenous plant life. They're producing highly oxygenated air, offsetting the degradation of our life support systems." Joseph's mind raced with the implications. "Elena, start cultivating those plants immediately. It might buy us the time we need to purpose this." With a nod, Dr. Rodriguez rushed off to implement her discovery, leaving Joseph to focus on the main problem at hand. As he studied the energy patterns, a potential solution began to form in his mind. "I think I've found a way to neutralize the field," he announced. "There's a harmonic frequency that could disrupt its structure without causing a catastrophic energy release. But there's a catch. We'll need to repurpose the outpost's primary power core to generate it." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Repurposing the power core was a dangerous gamble that could result in a facility-wide blackout. General Blackwood stepped forward, his expression grim. "Do it, Dr. Thompson. We're out of options." Joseph nodded and began the delicate process of rerouting power. As he worked, the outpost systems shut down one by one. Emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie red glow throughout the facility. In the sudden darkness, Stella's ability to sense electromagnetic fields became their primary means of monitoring the dissipation process. "It's working," she whispered, her small hand gripping Sarah's tightly. "The angry storm is getting smaller." As the harmonic frequency built, the energy field surrounding the outpost began to fluctuate wildly. The tremors intensified, and the sound of groaning metal filled the air as parts of the facility buckled under the strain. "Evacuate all non-essential areas," Jackson shouted. "Condense our population into the stable sections." As personnel rushed to comply, Joseph made a final, desperate adjustment to the frequency. The outpost shuddered as if struck by a massive impact, and for a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as though the entire structure might collapse. Then, suddenly, A brilliant flash of light burst through the windows. When it faded, the oppressive pressure of the energy field had vanished. In the stunned silence that followed, holographic projections flickered to life throughout the outpost. They depicted scenes from an ancient alien civilization, advanced technology, thriving cities, and finally, a cataclysmic event that led to their disappearance. As the implications of this revelation began to sink in, emergency teams rushed to repair critical infrastructure and assess the damage. Joseph, Sarah, and Stella found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity, their unique combination of skills having saved the outpost from destruction. Yet even as they began to grasp the magnitude of their achievement, a new realization dawned. The partial activation of the alien computer system had sent out a powerful signal into deep space, its purpose and destination unknown. Joseph exchanged a look with Sarah, both understanding the weight of what they had done. They had saved the outpost, but in doing so, they may have alerted other alien civilizations to their presence. As the immediate crisis subsided, a new tension filled the air, the anticipation of what might come next in this uncharted frontier of human and Tellarite space exploration. As the immediate crisis subsided, the outpost buzzed with a newfound energy. The partial activation of the alien computer system had not only saved them, but also opened up a world of possibilities. Joseph, Sarah, and Stella found themselves at the heart of a scientific revolution, their unique skills more crucial than ever. In the weeks that followed, Joseph led a team of human and Tellarite engineers in stabilizing and harnessing the hybrid technology that now permeated the outpost. The integration of alien systems with their own created an infrastructure beyond anything they had previously imagined. "Look at this," Joseph said, gesturing to a holographic display. "We've increased power efficiency by 300% just by incorporating these alien circuits into our grid." Sarah nodded, her eyes alight with excitement. "And the applications for medical technology are astounding. We're seeing cellular regeneration rates that were thought impossible." As they worked, Stella's abilities continued to evolve. Sarah's research yielded a breakthrough that left them all in awe. "Joseph," Sarah called out one evening, her voice trembling with excitement, "I've figured it out. Stella's genetic alterations. They've given her a form of bioelectric communication. She can interface directly with the alien technology." Joseph watched in amazement as Stella placed her hand on a console, her eyes closed in concentration. The alien symbols on the screen began to shift and reorganize, revealing data that had previously been inaccessible. "Dad," Stella said, her voice filled with wonder, "I can feel it. It's like the technology is alive and it's talking to me." This discovery accelerated their progress exponentially. With Stella's unique ability to interface with the alien systems, they were able to unlock new technological advancements at an unprecedented rate. Meanwhile, the signal sent into deep space by the alien computer system had not gone unnoticed. Admiral Walker established a dedicated task force to monitor for any potential responses, with Joseph appointed as the lead scientist. "We need to be prepared for anything," Admiral Walker said during a briefing. "Dr. Thompson, I want you to develop early warning systems using everything we've got, human, Tellarite, and this new alien tech." Joseph nodded, already formulating ideas. "We'll create a network of sensors that can detect even the faintest signals. If anything's out there, we'll know about it." As news of the outpost discovery spread, Earth and Tellar Prime began negotiations for a permanent joint governance structure. General Marcus Blackwood and Tellarite War Chief Groknak found themselves working side by side as co-administrators of the outpost. "I never thought I'd say this," Blackwood admitted to Groknak one day, "but we make a good team." Groknak grunted in agreement. Perhaps our peoples are not so different after all. Their cooperation became a model for human Tellarite collaboration, inspiring similar initiatives across known space. The outpost's success attracted attention from other species in the galactic community, culminating in the arrival of a Vulcan delegation led by Ambassador Sorak. The ambassador's stoic presence added a new layer of complexity to the already delicate political situation. "We are here to assess the potential impact of this technology on interstellar relations," Sorak stated upon arrival. Joseph and Sarah found themselves stretched thin, balancing their crucial roles in the outpost operations with their commitment to Stella's care and development. They implemented a mentorship program, pairing Stella with various experts to nurture her unique abilities while ensuring she received a well-rounded education. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's discovery of the mutated plant life continued to yield impressive results. Joseph applied his terraforming expertise to the project, creating a series of biodomes that simulated various Earth and Tellurite environments. "It's incredible," Elena said as they walked through a lush forest biodome. "These plants are not only thriving, but they're also producing oxygen at rates that could revolutionize our life support systems." As the outpost continued to evolve and expand, Lieutenant Commander Jackson oversaw the implementation of new security protocols. Working closely with Tellurite security experts, they created a layered defense system that incorporated both physical and energy-based barriers. "We need to be ready for anything," Jackson said during a security briefing. "This technology is too valuable to risk falling into the wrong hands." Just as they thought they had a handle on their new reality, the outpost's deep space sensors detected an approaching object of unknown origin. Initial scans suggested it might be a probe or small spacecraft, possibly drawn by the signal sent out during the energy field crisis. The discovery triggered a flurry of activity as the outpost prepared for potential first contact with a new alien species. Joseph and Sarah found themselves working around the clock, analyzing data and preparing for every possible scenario. As the object drew nearer, Stella's enhanced abilities detected unusual energy patterns emanating from it. She sat with her parents in the command center, her small face scrunched in concentration as she described what she sensed. "It's familiar," she said hesitantly. "The energy feels like the technology here, but different, older maybe." Joseph and Sarah exchanged a look of surprise. Could this object be connected to the long-lost alien civilization that had built the underground structure? As they worked to unravel this new mystery, the outpost hummed with anticipation. The unknown object continued its approach, carrying with it the potential to reshape their understanding of the universe and humanity's place within it. Joseph looked out at the star-filled sky, his mind racing with possibilities. Whatever was coming, he knew that the outpost, this unlikely union of humans and Tellurites, stood ready to face it together. The anticipation that had filled the air following the crisis now reached a fever pitch as the unknown object approached the outpost. Joseph, Sarah, and Stella found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity once again, working tirelessly alongside their human and Tellurite colleagues to prepare for what could be humanity's first contact with a new alien species. As the object entered the outer perimeter of the outpost's sensor range, Joseph leaned over a console, his eyes fixed on the incoming data. "It's slowing down," he announced, his voice tight with tension. "Whatever it is, it's under some form of intelligent control." Sarah joined him at the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The detailed scans are coming in now," she said. "It looks like a probe of some kind, about the size of a small shuttle." Joseph's fingers flew over the controls as he analyzed the probe's energy signature. His eyes widened in surprise. "This is incredible," he breathed. "The energy patterns. They're strikingly similar to the alien technology we found in the underground structure." The implications of this discovery sent a ripple of excitement through the command center. Admiral Walker stepped forward, his expression grave. "This could be our chance to unravel the mystery of the civilization that built those artifacts," he said. but we need to proceed with caution. After a brief consultation with General Marcus Blackwood and Tellurite War Chief Grocknack, Admiral Walker authorized an intercept mission. Lieutenant Commander Jackson was chosen to lead a joint human-Tellurite team, with Joseph included for his expertise in alien technology. As the team prepared to depart, Sarah pulled Joseph aside. "Be careful out there," she said, her eyes searching his face. "We still don't know what we're dealing with." Joseph nodded, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "I will. Keep an eye on Stella for me. Her abilities might be crucial in understanding this thing." The intercept team boarded a specially modified shuttle, its systems a hybrid of human, Tellurite, and reverse-engineered alien technology. As they launched from the outpost, Joseph felt a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. They were about to make history. As the shuttle approached the probe, Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice crackled over the comm system. "We're within visual range now, preparing to initiate contact protocols." Suddenly, the probe emitted a series of complex energy pulses. The shuttle systems began to flicker and malfunction, alarms blaring throughout the cabin. "We're losing control," Jackson shouted, his hands gripping the manual controls tightly. "Dr. Thompson, any ideas?" Before Joseph could respond, a transmission came through from the outpost. It was Sarah, her voice urgent. "Joseph, Stella just experienced an intense surge in her bioelectric senses. She says the probe's energy emissions match the frequency of her altered genetic structure." Joseph's mind raced as he processed this information. It's trying to communicate, he realized, but not through conventional signals. "We need to reconfigure our communication array to match Stella's frequency." Working quickly, Joseph modified the shuttle systems, amplifying and mimicking the energy patterns Stella had sensed. As they transmitted the modified signal, the probe's erratic behavior ceased abruptly. It adjusted its course, maintaining a constant distance from the shuttle. "It's studying us," Joseph murmured, watching the probe's movements on the shuttle sensors. The probe began emitting a new series of energy pulses. Joseph's eyes widened as he recognized fragments of the alien language he had encountered in the underground structure. "It's sending us data," he announced, his fingers flying over the controls as he worked to decipher the transmission. As the meaning of the message became clear, Joseph felt a surge of excitement. "It's a set of coordinates," he said. "On the planet's surface, far from the outpost location." Upon their return to the outpost, Admiral Walker convened an emergency meeting with the leadership. The decision was made to send a ground expedition to the provided coordinates, despite the potential risks. Joseph stepped forward, his face set with persistence. "I should lead this mission," he said. "My familiarity with the alien technology makes me the most qualified candidate." Sarah, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "I'm coming too," she insisted. "My expertise in xenobiology could be crucial, and I can help interpret Stella's perceptions." After some deliberation, Admiral Walker approved their participation, and a team was quickly assembled. As they prepared for departure, Stella experienced another intense surge in her bioelectric senses. "Dad," she said, her eyes wide with wonder. "I can see it. A huge underground chamber filled with amazing technology. It's bigger than anything we've found before." This new information added urgency to the mission. The expedition team departed in a heavily armored ground vehicle, specially designed for long-range exploration in hostile environments. As they journeyed towards the mysterious coordinates, the dense alien vegetation gave way to treacherous rock formations. Lieutenant Commander Jackson skillfully navigated the vehicle through the challenging terrain, the team's anticipation growing with each passing moment. Suddenly, their sensors lit up with activity. "Energy signature detected," Jackson announced. "Massive reading coming from beneath the surface." Joseph exchanged a glance with Sarah, both of them feeling the weight of the moment. They were on the verge of potentially the most significant alien discovery in human and Tellarite history. As the team prepared to disembark and search for an entrance to the underground chamber, Joseph couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. Whatever they were about to uncover, he knew it would change everything. The fate of the outpost, the future of interspecies relations, and perhaps even the safety of Earth and Tellar Prime all hung in the balance as they stepped out into the alien landscape, ready to face the unknown. Unknown as they stepped out into the alien landscape, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The ground vehicle came to a halt at the base of a towering cliff face. Joseph's eyes scanned the rocky surface, searching for any sign of the entrance Stella had described. Suddenly, a glint of metal caught his attention. "There," he said, pointing to a partially concealed opening in the rock. "That must be it." Lieutenant Commander Jackson activated the vehicle's defensive systems before they disembarked. "Stay alert," he warned as they approached the entrance. "We don't know what we might encounter in there." Joseph pulled out a handheld scanner, its display flickering with data as he swept it across the entrance. "I'm detecting energy signatures similar to what we found in the previous structure," he reported, "but on a much larger scale." Sarah nodded, her own scanner picking up unusual biological readings. "There's something alive in there," she murmured. "Plant life, maybe, but unlike anything we've seen on this planet so far." As they drew closer, patterns etched into the metal frame of the entrance became visible. Joseph's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the intricate designs. "These match the alien technology we encountered before," he said, tracing a finger along one of the grooves. "We're definitely in the right place." Jackson tapped his communicator. "Jackson to outpost. We've located the entrance and are preparing to go in. Establishing perimeter defenses now." While Jackson coordinated with the security team, Joseph and Sarah donned their protective gear. The suits were a marvel of engineering, combining human ingenuity, Tellarite craftsmanship, and reverse-engineered alien tech. Joseph felt a surge of pride as he activated the suit systems, knowing that this collaboration between species had made their current mission possible. "Ready?" Sarah asked, her voice slightly muffled by her helmet. Joseph nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." They stepped through the entrance, the beams of their helmet lights cutting through the darkness. As they moved deeper into the complex, the passage widened, opening into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The cavernous space stretched far beyond the reach of their lights, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Dormant machinery lined the walls, their alien forms hinting at purposes Joseph could only guess at. Strange, bioluminescent growths pulsed with a soft blue-green light, providing just enough illumination to navigate by. "This is incredible," Sarah whispered, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial apprehension. She approached one of the glowing growths, carefully taking a sample with a specialized tool. These organisms seemed to be symbiotically linked to the complex itself. They might be part of a biological life support system. Joseph, meanwhile, had been drawn to a cluster of inactive devices near the center of the chamber. His fingers danced over their surfaces, searching for any sign of controls or interfaces. "The technology here is far more advanced than what we found before," he said. "If we can get it working, the potential applications are staggering." As the team spread out to explore and document their findings, Joseph's attention was caught by a raised platform at the far end of the chamber. Atop it sat what could only be described as a control terminal, its sleek design a stark contrast to the ancient machinery surrounding it. "I think I've found something," he called out, making his way towards the platform. The others quickly joined him, forming a protective semicircle as he approached the terminal. Joseph studied the alien interface, his mind racing as he tried to apply what he'd learned from their previous encounters with this technology. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hand on what he hoped was an activation panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum that seemed to vibrate through their bones, the terminal came to life. Energy surged through the complex, lights flickering on in a cascading wave that revealed the true scale of the chamber they stood in. "Joseph," Sarah said, her voice tight with a mixture of awe and concern. "What did you do?" Before he could respond, holographic displays sprang to life around them, filling the air with alien symbols and pulsing with what seemed to be urgent warnings. "I don't think we're supposed to be here," Jackson said, his hand moving to his weapon as the sound of grinding metal echoed through the chamber. From hidden compartments in the walls emerged a series of sleek, robotic figures. Their smooth, featureless faces turned towards the expedition team as they began to advance with precise, measured steps. "Guardians," Joseph breathed, his mind racing. "They must be some kind of automated security system." As the team took up defensive positions, Joseph's thoughts turned to Stella and her unique connection to this alien technology. Acting on instinct, he pulled out the communication device linked to the outpost. "Stella," he said urgently, "I need your help. Can you sense anything from this place?" Back at the outpost, Stella's eyes widened as a flood of sensations washed over her. "Dad," she replied, her voice filled with wonder, "I can see it all. The Guardians, the machines. They're waiting for something. A key, I think." Joseph's gaze fixed on the approaching Guardians, a theory forming in his mind. "Stella, I'm going to try something. I need you to focus on sending your bioelectric signature through this link. Can you do that?" I think so," Stella replied, concentrating with all her might. As the Guardians drew nearer, Joseph held up the communication device, praying his hunch was correct. For a tense moment, nothing changed. Then, as if responding to an unheard command, the Guardians halted their advance. The holographic displays shifted, the warning symbols replaced by what appeared to be a welcoming message. With a series of clicks and whirs, the Guardians retreated to their wall compartments, leaving the stunned expedition team standing in the now-quiet chamber. "It worked," Sarah said, her voice filled with relief and amazement. "But how?" Joseph lowered the device, his palms sweating with the implications. "The probe," he said. "It must have been sent to find someone with Stella's unique genetic signature. Someone who could safely access this facility." As if in response to his words, new pathways lit up around the chamber, inviting them deeper into the complex. The team exchanged looks of tenacity and apprehension, knowing that what they discovered here could change everything. "We should proceed carefully," Jackson advised, still on high alert. "We don't know what other surprises this place might have in store for us." Joseph nodded in agreement, his eyes drawn to the newly revealed passages. "Let's see what other secrets this complex is hiding," he said, taking a step towards the unknown. As they ventured deeper into the alien facility, none of them could have predicted the astounding discoveries that awaited them, or the critical decision they would soon face. With consequences that could reshape the future of humanity, the Tellarites, and perhaps the entire galaxy. As they ventured deeper into the alien facility, the team's communicators suddenly erupted with urgent beeping. Joseph glanced at his device, his eyes widening as he saw a series of rapidly changing alien symbols on the screen. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, leaning in to get a better look. Joseph's fingers flew over the display, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's some kind of countdown," he said, his voice tight with tension. "I think we've triggered a protocol by accessing the main systems." Lieutenant Commander Jackson immediately snapped into action. "We need to secure this area and establish a direct link with the outpost," he ordered, gesturing for two of his security team to set up a portable communication array. Joseph nodded, his mind racing. "We can't leave until we understand what this countdown is for," he said. "It could be our only chance to uncover the truth about what happened to the civilization." "Agreed," Sarah said, her scientific curiosity overriding any sense of caution. But we need to be careful. We don't know what will happen when that timer reaches 0. As Jackson coordinated with the outpost, Joseph made a quick decision. We need to split up, he said. Sarah, take half the team and search for any additional control terminals. They might give us more insight into what's happening. I'll stay here and try to decipher this countdown. Sarah nodded, gathering a group of researchers and security personnel. As they moved deeper into the complex, the bioluminescent growths lining the walls pulsed with increasing intensity, casting an eerie blue-green glow over everything. Joseph turned his attention back to the main terminal, his fingers dancing over the alien interface as he attempted to make sense of the rapidly changing symbols. He could feel the complex coming to life around him, dormant systems humming with renewed energy. Suddenly, his communicator crackled to life. Joseph, Admiral Walker's voice came through, tight with concern. We're picking up massive energy spikes from your location. What's your status? We've activated some kind of protocol, Joseph replied, his eyes never leaving the terminal. There's a countdown in progress. I'm working on deciphering it now. Understood, Walker said. I'm dispatching additional support teams to your location, including a group of Tellurite engineers led by Galactic. They should be able to help stabilize the complex if needed. As Joseph acknowledged the order, he heard Sarah's voice over the comm. Joseph, you need to see this, she said, excitement evident in her tone. We've found another chamber, and there's something here that looks like a quantum computer. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Joseph's heart raced at the news. That could be the key to understanding this whole complex, he said. I'm on my way. Jackson, can you hold things down here? The lieutenant commander nodded, already coordinating with the newly arrived support teams. Joseph quickly made his way through the winding corridors, following Sarah's signal. As he entered the new chamber, he was struck by the sight of a massive structure that could only be the quantum computer Sarah had mentioned. Its architecture was eerily similar to the alien artifacts they'd studied back at the outpost, but on a scale that dwarfed anything they'd encountered before. This is incredible, Joseph breathed, approaching the machine. If we can interface with this, we might be able to decode the countdown and figure out what this place is really for. Sarah was already at work, connecting their hybrid technology to the alien system. The bioluminescent organisms are reacting to the energy fluctuations, she reported. I think they're part of the complex's communication network. If we can map their reactions, we might be able to create a cipher for the alien language. As they worked, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Joseph's communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission from Galactic. We've arrived at the complex, the Tellurite engineer reported. The energy output is causing some structural instability. We're working on reinforcing the critical areas now. Joseph acknowledged the update, grateful for the Tellurite's expertise. With their help, they would have a better chance of keeping the complex stable long enough to unravel its secrets. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Joseph, fueled by a combination of adrenaline and scientific curiosity, barely noticed the passage of time as he worked to interface their technology with the alien quantum computer. Sarah's breakthrough with the bioluminescent organisms proved invaluable, providing a key to deciphering the complex's language. As the countdown entered its final stages, Joseph began to piece together the purpose of the protocol they'd inadvertently triggered. His eyes widened as the implications became clear. It's some kind of reactivation sequence, he announced to the team. I think it's trying to initiate a subroutine that's been dormant for millennia. It could be linked to whatever caused the civilization to disappear. The tension in the room was palpable as everyone realized the gravity of the situation. They were standing on the precipice of uncovering an ancient mystery, but the potential consequences were unknown and potentially catastrophic. Joseph took a deep breath, weighing their options. With a mix of commitment and trepidation, he made his decision. "We need to try and halt this process," he said. "At least until we understand it better. Sarah, Jackson, I need your help. We're going to attempt an override sequence." As the team sprang into action, Joseph couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Whatever happened in the next few minutes would have far-reaching consequences, not just for their mission, but potentially for the future of both human and Tellarite civilizations. With a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening, he began inputting the override commands, hoping against hope that they weren't about to make a terrible mistake. As Joseph's fingers hovered over the final command to initiate the override sequence, a piercing alarm blared through the complex, causing everyone to freeze. "What's happening?" Sarah shouted over the noise, her eyes darting to the various displays around them. Before Joseph could respond, Admiral Walker's voice crackled through their communicators. "Joseph, hold your position. We've detected a fleet of unknown spacecraft entering the system." Joseph's heart raced as he processed this new information. "Understood, Admiral. What are your orders?" "We're on high alert. Continue your work on unlocking the complex's systems, but prioritize defensive capabilities. We don't know if these vessels are friendly or hostile." As the team refocused their efforts, Joseph couldn't shake the feeling that these new arrivals were somehow connected to the alien civilization that had built this facility. He turned to Sarah, his expression grim. "We need to accelerate our efforts. If those ships are hostile, we'll need every advantage we can get." Sarah nodded, her fingers flying over the alien interface. "I'll focus on the defensive systems. You keep working on decrypting the main database." Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. The team worked tirelessly, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and the ever-present threat looming above them. Joseph's mind raced as he sifted through the alien data, searching for anything that could give them an edge. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the complex, followed by the sound of grinding metal. Joseph spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "What was that?" Jackson asked, already moving towards the source of the noise. As they rounded a corner, they saw one of the previously secured storage vaults slowly opening, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. Joseph approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. "Sarah, you need to see this," he called out, his voice barely above a whisper. Inside the chamber, they found a row of sleek metallic pods, each large enough to hold a humanoid figure. Joseph's breath caught in his throat as he realized what they were looking at. "Stasis pods," Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "And look, that one's active." Sure enough, one of the pods was humming with energy, its system slowly coming online. Joseph tapped his communicator. "Admiral Walker, we've made a significant discovery. We may be on the verge of reviving a member of the alien species that built this complex." As they carefully monitored the pod's progress, Joseph couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. The implications of this discovery were staggering, but they also added another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. Back at the outpost, Lieutenant Commander Jackson coordinated with the Defense Forces, implementing a series of tactical maneuvers to prepare for any potential confrontation. Automated defense satellites were positioned strategically, while key installations were cloaked to minimize their detectability. As the team worked, Joseph's communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission from the outpost. "Dad," Stella's voice came through, filled with a mix of excitement and concern. "I'm sensing something from the approaching fleet. It's similar to the energy patterns in the complex." Joseph's mind raced with the implications of this revelation. "Can you describe what you're sensing, Stella?" As Stella detailed her perceptions, Joseph's suspicions grew. The similarities between the fleet's energy signatures and the complex's technology suggested a possible connection, one that could dramatically alter their understanding of the situation. At the outpost, General Marcus Blackwood and Tellarite War Chief Grocknack set aside their ongoing negotiations to establish a joint command center. Their cooperation served as a model for the rest of the personnel, strengthening the bonds between humans and Tellarites in the face of this common challenge. As tensions mounted, Joseph made a breakthrough in deciphering the alien computer systems. His eyes widened as he unlocked a vast database of advanced scientific knowledge, including details on faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and matter synthesis. "Admiral," he called out, his voice tight with excitement, "you need to see this. The information we've uncovered, it could revolutionize our understanding of physics, of the universe itself." Admiral Walker's response was immediate. "Begin transmitting key data to Earth and tell Lar Prime immediately. We need to ensure this knowledge is preserved, no matter what happens next." As Joseph worked to transmit the data, Sarah's team made significant progress with the active stasis pod. The pod's occupant, a female member of the ancient alien species, began showing signs of consciousness. "Joseph," Sarah called out, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension, "I think she's waking up. We need to prepare for first contact." As the team scrambled to set up a specialized medical bay, the approaching fleet entered orbit around the planet. Joseph watched the tactical displays with anxious anticipation, relieved to see that the ships maintained a defensive posture without making any overtly hostile moves. Suddenly, a series of complex mathematical equations appeared on their communication screens. Joseph's mind raced as he studied the transmission. "It's a test," he realized. "They're gauging our level of technological understanding." Working with Stella's insights, Joseph crafted a response incorporating elements of the advanced scientific knowledge they had recently uncovered. As he sent the transmission, he couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. Moments later, a new message appeared on their screens. Joseph's heart raced as he read the alien invitation for a delegation to board their command ship. As Admiral Walker began assembling a team for this historic meeting, Joseph turned his attention back to the awakening alien in the stasis pod. He knew that the next few hours would be crucial, potentially reshaping the future of human and Tellarite civilizations forever. With a deep breath, Joseph prepared himself for what lay ahead. The stage was set for a momentous encounter, one that would test the limits of their diplomacy, scientific knowledge, and courage in the face of the unknown. Unknown! The shuttle's engines thrummed to life, propelling them towards the massive alien command ship looming in orbit. As they approached, Joseph felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The events of the past few hours had unfolded at a dizzying pace, radically altering the mission parameters and potentially changing the course of human history. Beside him, Zanera sat perfectly still, her alien features a mask of calm concentration. The newly revived scientist from the ancient civilization had quickly become an indispensable part of their delegation. Her presence alone had transformed what was initially a tense first contact situation into something far more complex and promising. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the alien ship growing larger in the view screen. "Look at the scale of it," she breathed. "The engineering required to build something like that. It's beyond anything we've ever conceived." Stella nodded, her eyes slightly unfocused as she reached out with her enhanced senses. "The energy patterns are incredible. It's like nothing I've ever felt before." Suddenly, the shuttle shuddered as an invisible force washed over it. Alarms blared, and Joseph's hands flew over the controls. "Energy scan," he announced, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Zanera, can you help us reconfigure the shields?" The alien scientist moved swiftly, her long fingers dancing across the unfamiliar human interface with surprising dexterity. "Adjusting shield harmonics," she said, her words flowing through the translation device. This should allow us safe passage without compromising our defenses. The alarms fell silent and the shuttle steadied. Joseph let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Nice work," he said, nodding to Zanera. As they approached the docking bay, Joseph activated the comlink. "Admiral Walker, we're about to dock with the alien vessel. Any final instructions?" The Admiral's voice crackled through the speaker. "Remember your training, but be prepared to adapt. This is uncharted territory for all of us. Good luck and Godspeed." The shuttle glided into the cavernous hangar bay, dwarfed by the sheer scale of the alien architecture. As the engines powered down, Joseph turned to address the team. "Remember, we're here as diplomats and scientists. Let's make humanity proud." They disembarked, stepping onto the polished floor of the alien ship. A group of figures approached, their appearance strikingly similar to Zanera, yet subtly different in ways that spoke of millennia of divergent evolution. Joseph activated the portable translation device, and a sphere of shimmering light expanded around them, ready to interpret the alien language. The lead alien stepped forward, its eyes widening as it took in Zanera's presence. A flurry of activity erupted among the alien crew, with urgent vocalizations and gestures flying back and forth. Zanera spoke, her words flowing through the translator. "Greetings, descendants. I am Zanera, senior scientist of the Zkalar civilization. I come from a time long past, awakened by these humans who now inhabit our ancient world." The alien leader's response came swiftly, a mix of awe and suspicion in its voice. "How is this possible? Our ancestors' records speak of a great cataclysm that destroyed all life on our homeworld." "Not all life," Zanera corrected. "A few of us entered stasis, hoping to preserve our knowledge and rebuild. It seems fate had other plans." As the conversation unfolded, Sarah discreetly activated her scanner, collecting data on the physiological differences between Zanera and the ship's crew. The implications of such long-term evolutionary changes could be staggering. Meanwhile, Stella's eyes darted around the hangar, her enhanced senses picking up on the intricate web of energy coursing through the ship. "Joseph," she whispered, "there's something at the core of this vessel. The power output. It's unlike anything we've seen, even in the ancient complex." Joseph nodded, filing the information away for later. He stepped forward, addressing the alien leader. "We come in peace, seeking to understand and learn. Your return to this world presents an opportunity for cooperation that could benefit both our peoples." The alien leader studied Joseph intently. "You have accessed our ancestral technology, unlocked secrets long thought lost. This is unexpected." Before Joseph could respond, his communicator buzzed urgently. "Excuse me," he said, stepping back to answer the call. General Blackwood's voice came through, tight with tension. "Joseph, we've got a situation. Long-range sensors have picked up multiple alien fleets entering the system from various vectors. We need you to wrap up this meeting and get back here ASAP." Joseph's mind raced, processing the implications of this new development. He turned back to the alien delegation, aware that the next few moments could shape the future of human-alien relations. "Your leaders," he began carefully, "are they expecting company?" The alien's expression shifted, a mix of confusion and concern crossing its features. It turned, conferring rapidly with its companions in their native tongue. Joseph exchanged glances with Sarah and Stella, their expressions mirroring his own apprehension. The arrival of additional alien fleets added a new layer of complexity to an already delicate situation. The alien leader faced them once more. "We were unaware of any other expeditions to this sector. This news is troubling." Zanera stepped forward, her voice calm but urgent. "We must act quickly. The technology on the planet's surface, the remaining stasis pods, They must be secured and studied before others arrive. The alien leader nodded, its decision seemingly made. We propose a joint expedition to the planet's surface. Our combined knowledge may be the key to understanding the legacy of our shared past. Joseph weighed the offer, acutely aware of the ticking clock. A joint mission could foster goodwill and cooperation, but it also risked exposing Earth's relatively limited defensive capabilities. As he opened his mouth to respond, a low rumble reverberated through the ship. Alarms blared, and the alien crew burst into frenzied activity. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, her hand instinctively moving to her equipment. The alien leader's response was grim. "The new arrivals have entered the system. They are hailing us and powering up their weapons." Joseph's heart raced as he realized the delicate peace they had been nurturing was suddenly balanced on a knife's edge. The choices they made in the next few moments could determine not just the fate of this mission, but potentially the future of humanity itself. Joseph's mind raced as he processed the alien leader's grim announcement. The delicate balance they had achieved was now threatened by the arrival of unknown forces, their weapons primed and ready. Before he could formulate a response, his communicator crackled to life once more. Admiral Walker's voice cut through the tension, her tone urgent but controlled. "Joseph, we've detected multiple alien fleets entering the system from various vectors. The situation has escalated. We need you back at the outpost immediately." Joseph exchanged a quick glance with Sarah and Stella, then turned to address the alien leader. "It seems we both face an unexpected challenge. I propose we combine our efforts to address this new development." The alien leader considered for a moment, then nodded. "Agreed. Our shared history and the potential for cooperation are too valuable to risk in conflict. What do you suggest?" Joseph's mind whirled, formulating a plan on the spot. "We have access to advanced technology from your ancestors' complex on the planet's surface. I propose a joint demonstration of this technology to show the approaching fleets the benefits of cooperation." The alien leader's eyes widened, intrigued by the bold suggestion. "An interesting proposal. How do you envision this demonstration?" "We'll need to coordinate with our teams on the surface," Joseph explained. "With your permission, we'd like to use your ship's advanced communication systems to relay the plan." The alien leader gestured to a nearby console. "By all means." Sarah quickly established a link with Admiral Walker, outlining Joseph's plan. The Admiral's response was swift and decisive. "Understood. We'll begin preparations immediately." "Good thinking, Joseph." As Sarah coordinated with the outpost, Zanera approached Joseph, her expression one of excitement. "I've been working with the ship's scientists," she said, her words flowing through the translator. "We've made a remarkable discovery about the planet's composition." Joseph listened intently as Zanera explained their findings. The unique mineral makeup of the planet, when combined with the alien technology, created an energy source of unprecedented power. The implications were staggering, potentially revolutionizing space travel and terraforming capabilities. Suddenly, Stella's voice cut through the buzz of activity. "Joseph, there's something wrong with the ship's power core. I can sense it." Joseph turned to the alien leader, explaining Stella's abilities and her concerns. Together, they made their way to the engineering section, where alien technicians were already swarming around the core. Joseph's expertise in terraforming technology proved invaluable as he worked alongside the alien engineers to devise a temporary solution. The alien leader watched in amazement as the humans' quick thinking and adaptability helped avert a potential disaster. "Your skills are impressive," the alien leader admitted. "Perhaps this cooperation will yield even greater benefits than we initially thought." With the immediate crisis averted, Joseph and his team prepared to return to the planet's surface. As they boarded the shuttle, Sarah received an update from Lieutenant Commander Jackson. "The ancient complex is prepped and ready," she reported. "Jackson and the Telluride engineers have integrated the new energy source into the systems." The descent through the planet's atmosphere was tense, the shuttle weaving through the network of defense satellites and cloaked installations. As they touched down near the ancient complex, Joseph could see the combined human, Telluride, and alien teams working in concert to prepare for the demonstration. General Marcus Blackwood and Telluride War Chief Grocknack approached as they disembarked. "We've sent out diplomatic communications to the approaching fleets," Blackwood reported. "Invited them to observe the demonstration. Hopefully, it'll be enough to give them pause." Joseph nodded, then turned to address the assembled teams. "All right, everyone, we have one shot at this. Let's show these newcomers what cooperation can achieve." As final preparations were made, Zanera and Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked to stabilize the remaining stasis pods. "We'll be ready to revive more of my people soon," Zanera said, her voice filled with hope. Their knowledge could be crucial in the coming negotiations. The tension mounted as the alien fleets entered orbit. Joseph took a deep breath, then gave the signal to begin the demonstration. The ancient complex hummed to life, channeling an immense amount of energy into a massive holographic projection visible from space. The display was breathtaking, showcasing advanced spacecraft designs and large-scale planetary terraforming projects. It was a testament to the combined potential of human ingenuity, Telluride engineering, and ancient alien technology. For a moment, it seemed the gambit had paid off. The approaching fleets halted their advance, and communication channels buzzed with activity as the various factions expressed interest in peaceful negotiations. But their elation was short-lived. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. Sarah's eyes widened as she checked her instruments. "Joseph, the energy output from the demonstration, it's triggered some kind of seismic event." Joseph's mind raced as he realized the implications. The demonstration had inadvertently activated a dormant planetary defense system, one far more powerful and unpredictable than they had anticipated. The very technology they had hoped would secure peace now threatened to tear the planet apart. As tremors intensified and the ground began to crack, Joseph locked eyes with Sarah and Stella. They knew without speaking that their greatest challenge lay ahead. With the fate of the planet, the ancient alien legacy, and the future of interspecies cooperation hanging in the balance, they prepared to face the unfolding crisis head-on. Joseph's mind raced as he processed the unfolding crisis. The ground beneath their feet continued to tremble, the vibrations growing more intense with each passing moment. He turned to Sarah and Stella, commitment etched on his face. "We need to get to the source of this disturbance," he said, his voice barely audible over the rumbling. "There has to be a way to stop it." Sarah nodded, her fingers flying over her datapad. "I'm detecting a massive energy surge coming from beneath the ancient complex. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Joseph quickly accessed the complex's systems, his eyes widening as he analyzed the data. It's not just a demonstration, he realized. We've inadvertently activated some kind of planetary defense mechanism. It's destabilizing the entire crust. Without hesitation, Joseph assembled a team of human, Telluride, and alien scientists. As they prepared to venture into the unknown depths beneath the complex, he turned to Sarah. "Stay here and coordinate with Admiral Walker," he instructed. "We need to start evacuating non-essential personnel to the ships in orbit, and make sure Dr. Rodriguez secures the revived aliens and stasis pods. We can't risk losing them if the complex collapses." Sarah nodded, immediately establishing communication links with the orbiting fleet. Joseph then turned to Stella, whose enhanced senses were already picking up on the complex energy patterns emanating from below. "Stella, I need you to guide us," he said. "Your abilities might be our best chance at understanding what we're dealing with down there." As Joseph's team descended into the newly discovered tunnels, the tremors intensified. They navigated through collapsing passageways, using their combined knowledge of the ancient technology to stabilize the structure around them. Debris rained down, forcing them to dodge and weave as they pressed deeper into the planet's crust. Finally, they emerged into an enormous chamber that took their breath away. A massive crystalline structure dominated the center, pulsating with energy that seemed to ripple through the air itself. "Incredible," breathed one of the alien scientists, his multiple eyes wide with wonder. Joseph approached the structure cautiously, his mind racing to understand its purpose and function. Stella's voice crackled through their communication devices, guiding them towards key control nodes within the crystal. "The energy patterns are complex," Stella reported, her voice strained with concentration. "But I think I can help you recalibrate them. We need to redirect the excess energy safely, or this whole planet might tear itself apart." As Joseph and the alien scientists worked to adjust the nodes, following Stella's precise instructions, Sarah's voice came through their comms. "Joseph, the situation up here is deteriorating fast," she reported. "General Blackwood and War Chief Grocknack are organizing the fleet into a defensive perimeter. They're worried about planetary debris being ejected into orbit." Joseph gritted his teeth, his hands steady as he manipulated the alien technology. "Understood. We're making progress down here, but it's slow going. This technology is incredibly complex." Suddenly, Zanera's voice joined the conversation. "I have an idea," she said, her words urgent. "If we can coordinate the ships in orbit to create a stabilizing field using their tractor beams, it might buy us more time." Joseph nodded, even though Zanera couldn't see him. "Do it," he ordered. "We'll take any help we can get." As the team continued their work in the underground chamber, they began to make progress. The violent tremors started to subside, replaced by a steady, more manageable vibration. However, Joseph soon realized that simply shutting down the defense mechanism wasn't an option. If we power this down completely, it could have catastrophic consequences for the planet's ecosystem, he explained to the team. "We need to find a way to channel this energy productively." After a moment of intense thought, Joseph's eyes lit up with an idea. "What if we could direct this energy into the planet's core?" he suggested. "It might jumpstart dormant geological processes that could benefit the planet in the long run." The alien scientists exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. It was a risky plan, but given the circumstances, it was their best option. As they began implementing Joseph's plan, the seismic activity reached a critical point. Sarah's voice came through again, filled with urgency. "Joseph, we've got massive fissures opening up on the surface," she reported. "The outpost and complex are in imminent danger. I'm activating the experimental force field technology we developed from the alien artifacts. It's our only chance to protect the structures and the people inside." Joseph acknowledged her decision, his focus never wavering from the task at hand. He could feel the immense energies flowing through the crystalline structure, guided by his team's careful manipulations. Suddenly, Stella's voice cut through their concentration. "Joseph, I think I can help," she said, her voice strained. "I'm establishing a mental link with the defense mechanism. It's overwhelming, but I think I can help guide the energy flow more precisely." With Stella's enhanced abilities providing crucial guidance, Joseph and his team worked tirelessly to redirect the planet's immense energies. The chamber around them shook violently, crystals cracking and reforming as the very fabric of the planet seemed to shift. For what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, they fought against the forces threatening to tear the world apart. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, the tremors began to subside. The pulsing energy of the crystalline structure stabilized, its glow becoming steady and controlled. Joseph exhaled slowly, hardly daring to believe they had succeeded. He looked around at his team, seeing the same mix of exhaustion and cautious hope reflected in their faces. General Marcus Blackwood and War Chief Grocknack took charge of security, establishing a joint force that combined the best aspects of human and Tellarite military tactics. "We're writing the book on multi-species peacekeeping," Blackwood remarked as they observed a training exercise. The ancient complex underwent extensive renovations, with Joseph overseeing the integration of various technologies. The result was a hybrid infrastructure that pushed the boundaries of what was previously thought possible. Holographic interfaces merged seamlessly with Tellarite energy conduits and alien crystal matrices, creating a truly unique command center. As the colony expanded, Sarah turned her attention to the challenge of sustainable food production. She established hydroponic farms in the repurposed lower levels of the complex and began experimenting with synthesizing new plant species adapted to the mineral-rich soil left behind by the cooling. Lava flows. The arrival of a Vulcan delegation added another layer of complexity to the growing community. Their expertise in planetary sciences proved invaluable, but their presence also highlighted the need for a formal governing structure. Joseph, recognizing the potential for conflict, proposed the creation of an interstellar council. "We need a body that can represent all our interests fairly," he argued during a heated debate. "This planet belongs to all of us now." As preparations for the council's formation began, a new challenge arose. A series of unexplained energy surges rippled across the planet, disrupting communications and interfering with the newly established infrastructure. Joseph frowned as he studied the data. These surges, they're connected to the defense mechanism somehow. We need to get to the bottom of this. Stella closed her eyes, reaching out with her enhanced senses. After a moment, her eyes snapped open. "I've found something," she said urgently. "There's another chamber, deep beneath the complex. It's calling to me." Initial scans of the newly discovered chamber revealed technology far beyond anything they had encountered so far. The potential for groundbreaking discoveries was immense, but so were the risks. Joseph looked at his team, his expression grave. "We need to explore this chamber," he said. "Whatever's down there could change everything. Again." As they prepared to descend into the unknown depths, Joseph couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The chamber below held secrets that could reshape their understanding of the ancient alien civilization and potentially alter the balance of power in the galaxy. With a deep breath, he led his team towards the entrance, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Ahead, the anticipation of what they might discover in the depths of the planet filled Joseph with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As they approached the entrance to the newly discovered chamber, a low rumble reverberated through the ground. Joseph held up his hand, signaling the team to halt. "Everyone, hold position," he ordered, activating his comm link. "Sarah, are you reading this?" Sarah's voice crackled through the comm system. "Affirmative, Joseph. We're detecting localized seismic activity originating from your location. It appears to be distinct from our earlier energy redirection efforts." Joseph frowned, his mind racing through potential scenarios. "Understood. We're implementing full safety protocols. Make sure the surface team is prepared for any contingencies." He turned to his team, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of their protective suits. "All right, let's gear up. Full protective measures, constant communication. We don't know what we're walking into, so stay alert." As they donned their advanced suits, equipped with an array of sensors and reinforced against potential hazards, the tremors intensified. Small rocks and debris began to fall from the tunnel ceiling, creating a treacherous obstacle course. "Move carefully," Joseph instructed, leading the way. "Watch your footing, and keep an eye on your suit's structural integrity readings." They pressed forward, navigating through increasingly unstable passages. The further they descended, the more pronounced the tremors became. Joseph's helmet display flashed with constant updates on the surrounding environment, the numbers fluctuating wildly as they neared their destination. After what felt like hours of careful maneuvering, they finally reached the entrance to the mysterious chamber. Before them stood an imposing door, covered in intricate patterns and symbols unlike anything they had encountered before. Joseph approached the door, his fingers hovering over the strange markings. This locking mechanism. It's incredibly complex. I've never seen anything quite like it. As he began the painstaking process of deciphering the lock, Stella's voice came through the comm system. Joseph, I'm detecting a massive surge in energy readings from within the chamber. Whatever's in there, it's becoming increasingly active. Joseph acknowledged her warning, his focus never wavering from the task at hand. Hours passed as he worked, the rest of the team maintaining a vigilant watch on their surroundings. Finally, with a series of clicks and whirs, the massive door began to move. Stand back, Joseph ordered, stepping away from the entrance. As the door slowly swung open, a blinding light poured out, forcing the team to activate their suits' protective visors. When their vision adjusted, they found themselves staring into a vast spherical chamber that defied their expectations. The room was filled with interconnected crystalline structures, each pulsing with an otherworldly energy. At the center stood a towering pillar of pure light, its intensity fluctuating in rhythm with the tremors that shook the planet. Incredible! Joseph breathed, his voice filled with awe. This must be the planet's primary power source. The energy readings are off the charts. As they cautiously entered the chamber, their suit sensors began to go haywire, struggling to process the sheer amount of data surrounding them. Joseph activated his comm link once more. Sarah, are you seeing this? We're getting the feed, Joseph, Sarah replied, her voice tense. The energy output from that chamber is unlike anything we've ever recorded. Be careful in there. The team spread out, each member taking readings and cataloging the various structures within the chamber. Joseph approached the central pillar, his mind racing with theories about its purpose and capabilities. Suddenly, as he reached out to examine a nearby crystal formation, a shimmering barrier sprang to life, separating him from the rest of the team. Similar barriers appeared throughout the chamber, creating a complex maze of force fields. It's some kind of automated defense system, Joseph called out to his team. Everyone, stay calm. I think it's testing us. Before them, holographic displays materialized, presenting a series of intricate technological and logical puzzles. Joseph quickly realized that solving these challenges was the key to progressing further into the chamber. All right, team, he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Let's put our heads together. We've got the combined knowledge of multiple species here. Let's use it. As they worked through the increasingly difficult tests, Joseph couldn't help but marvel at the diversity of his team. Human intuition, Tellarite persistence, and alien perspectives all proved crucial in overcoming the chamber's defenses. Hours passed as they progressed deeper into the chamber, each solved puzzle revealing new secrets about the ancient civilization that had created this place. The central pillar grew closer, its energy output intensifying with each step they took. Just as they reached the final barrier, mere meters from the pillar itself, Joseph noticed something that made his heart race. Within the column of light, he could discern a faint, shifting form. Team, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I think there's something alive in there. As if in response to his words, the pillar pulsed brightly, and a surge of energy coursed through the chamber. The team watched in amazement as holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing vivid images of a long-lost alien civilization. Joseph activated his comm link once more, his voice urgent. Sarah, Stella, are you seeing this? We need to establish communication protocols immediately. We may have just made first contact with a member of the ancient alien species. As the team scrambled to initiate their carefully planned communication procedures, Joseph couldn't shake the feeling that they stood on the precipice of a discovery that would change everything. The energy being within the pillars seemed to respond to their efforts, its form becoming more distinct with each passing moment. With anxious anticipation, Joseph watched as the first attempts at communication began, knowing that what happened next could reshape their understanding of the universe itself. Joseph's eyes widened as the form within the pillar of light became more distinct, the energy being pulsed and shifted, its ethereal form responding to their attempts at communication. Without hesitation, Joseph made a critical decision. "We need to initiate a full data transfer," he announced, his voice firm despite the tension in the air. "The risks are high, but the potential knowledge we could gain is invaluable." Sarah's voice crackled through the comm system, concern evident in her tone. "Joseph, are you sure? The energy readings are already off the charts." "I'm sure," he replied, his fingers flying over the holographic interface before him. "Implement emergency protocol Epsilon 7. We need to stabilize the chamber's systems and prevent an overload." As Joseph worked, the rest of the team sprang into action. Engineers rerouted power conduits, while xenobiologists fine-tuned their translation algorithms. The chamber hummed with increased activity, both mechanical and biological. Sarah coordinated efforts from the surface, her voice a constant presence in their comm links. "I'm mobilizing additional power management teams. We're seeing unprecedented energy surges across the entire region." As the data transfer began, the effects were immediate and startling. The ground beneath their feet trembled, not with the earlier seismic activity, but with a deep, resonant power. Joseph watched in awe as the holographic displays around them flickered and expanded, showing vivid images of planetary transformation. "Are you seeing this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Stella nodded, her eyes closed in concentration as she maintained her connection with the energy being. "It's incredible. The planet is changing, Joseph, on a scale we've never seen before." Outside the underground chamber, the world was indeed transforming. New landmasses rose from the oceans, their emergence accompanied by plumes of steam and volcanic activity. Existing continents shifted and reshaped, mountains folding and valleys deepening in a matter of hours. General Marcus Blackwood's voice cut through the comm chatter. "We're evacuating the coastal outposts. The geographical changes are too unpredictable. I need all available transport ships for relocation efforts." Joseph acknowledged the order, his mind racing with the implications of what they had set in motion. The chamber around them pulsed with energy, the crystalline structures resonating in harmony with the data flow. Stella's eyes snapped open, her expression a mixture of awe and urgency. "Joseph, I'm beginning to translate portions of the data. There's something coming, a wave of energy from the galactic core." "What kind of wave?" Joseph asked, his hands never pausing in their work to stabilize the transfer. "It's massive," Stella replied, her voice trembling slightly. "According to this data, it's a cyclical event. It has the potential to reset the development of entire civilizations." Joseph's mind raced with the implications. He turned to the central pillar, its light now pulsing in a complex rhythm. Is this why the ancient aliens built all this? As a defense against the wave? As if in response to his question, the chamber shuddered. New holographic displays sprang to life, showing a vast network of structures hidden beneath the planet's surface. "It's a planetary shield," Joseph breathed, understanding dawning on him. "We need to activate it. Now." His fingers danced across the alien controls, initiating sequences he barely understood but somehow knew were critical. Across the planet's surface, massive structures began to emerge. Ancient technology, dormant for millennia, stirred to life. Sarah's voice came through the comm, filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Joseph, we're detecting similar activations across the entire star system. Whatever you've done, it's affecting more than just our planet. As the planetary defense system hummed to life, Joseph realized the true scale of what they had discovered. This wasn't just about protecting one world. It was about safeguarding the entire galaxy. The comm system crackled with urgent messages. The orbiting fleet reported the arrival of new ships, representatives from Earth and other alien worlds converging on the transformed planet. The activation of the defense network had not gone unnoticed. Joseph turned to his team, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "This planet is more than just a colony now. It's the key to survival for countless species." As if to underscore his words, a new alert sounded. Long-range sensors had detected something massive entering the star system. Joseph's breath caught in his throat as he saw the readings. "We've got company," he announced, his eyes fixed on the approaching vessel. "And something tells me they're here because of what we just activated." The massive ship, dwarfing even the largest vessels in the orbiting fleet, moved with purpose towards the transformed planet. Joseph knew that whatever came next would change the course of history for not just humanity, but for all sentient life in the galaxy. With a deep breath, he opened a channel to the approaching ship, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Joseph took a deep breath, steadying himself for the momentous task ahead. The massive ship loomed ever closer, its presence a stark reminder of the gravity of their situation. But before Joseph could open communications, a surge of energy coursed through the chamber, causing the holographic displays to flicker and warp. "Joseph," Stella's voice cut through the chaos. "The energy wave, it's accelerating." Joseph's fingers flew across the alien controls, his mind racing to process the influx of new data. "Our calculations were off," he muttered, eyes scanning the rapidly changing figures. "We need to adjust the shield harmonics, now." As if responding to his urgency, the energy being within the pillar pulsed brightly, flooding Joseph's mind with a torrent of complex algorithms. Without hesitation, he began implementing them, his hands moving with a certainty that belied the alien nature of the technology. "Sarah," he called to the comm link, "we need to boost the shield's power output. Can you coordinate with the fleet?" Sarah's response was immediate. "Already on it. We're deploying energy amplifiers around the planet. It's a mix of our tech and what we've gleaned from the alien data. Should give us the edge we need." As Joseph worked to fine-tune the shield's frequency, he caught glimpses of the frantic activity outside the chamber. The Zarn ships, sleek and otherworldly, moved into position around the star system, their advanced technology synchronizing seamlessly with the planetary defenses. General Blackwood's gruff voice cut through the comm chatter. "Joseph, we're securing the surface. Grocknack and I are leading the evacuation of high-risk areas and setting up fortified bunkers near the shield generators." Joseph nodded, though he knew the general couldn't see him. "Good thinking. We'll need those backup systems when the wave hits." As if on cue, the chamber shuddered violently. Joseph steadied himself against a crystal formation, watching in awe as the holographic displays showed the energy waves leading edge entering the solar system. The effects were immediate and terrifying. Outer planets shifted in their orbits, pulled by unseen forces. The star at the center of the system flared with unprecedented intensity, bathing the inner planets in deadly radiation. Just as Joseph feared the shield would buckle under the onslaught, it sprang to life. A shimmering barrier enveloped the planet, deflecting the worst of the solar activity. But their troubles were a long way to go. The ground beneath their feet rumbled ominously. Even through the thick walls of the underground chamber, Joseph could hear the distant roar of volcanic eruptions and the crash of massive waves. "Stella," he called out, "what's the status on the shield?" Stella's face was a mask of concentration as she maintained her connection with the energy being. "It's holding, but—" Her eyes snapped open, filled with a mixture of fear and persistence. "Joseph, the being says it's not enough. The shield won't withstand the wave's peak intensity." Before Joseph could process this devastating news, Stella continued, her voice tight with urgency. "There's a last resort measure. We need to overload the planet's core." Joseph's mind reeled at the implications. That could tear the planet apart. Stella nodded grimly. "But if we can control it, channel the energy, it might be our only chance to save not just this world, but all the others connected to the network." For a moment, the weight of the decision threatened to overwhelm Joseph. But as he looked at the determined faces of his team, at the holographic displays showing the approaching wave of destruction, he knew there was only one choice. "Do it," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Sarah, we're implementing Emergency Protocol Omega. Prepare for a controlled overload of the planetary core." As Sarah's acknowledgement crackled through the comm, Joseph turned to his team. "We're heading to the core. It's time to save a galaxy." The journey to the planet's molten heart was a blur of frantic activity. Joseph led his team through a maze of ancient tunnels, their path illuminated by the eerie glow of alien technology coming to life around them. As they descended, the heat became oppressive, their environmental suits struggling to compensate. Joseph could feel the vibrations of the planet's unrest through the soles of his boots, a constant reminder of the precarious balance they were trying to maintain. Finally, they reached the core chamber. The sight took Joseph's breath away, a vast cavern filled with swirling, molten energy, pulsing with the planet's life force. "Deploy the probes," Joseph ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. As the team worked to position the highly advanced devices designed to channel and direct the core's energy, Joseph couldn't help but marvel at the fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology. Each probe hummed with power, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. "Probes in position," one of the engineers reported. "Ready to activate on your mark." Joseph took a deep breath, acutely aware that his next words could determine the fate of not just this planet, but countless others across the galaxy. "Activate the probes. Full power." The effect was immediate and staggering. The core's energy surged, flowing into the probes in great, pulsing waves. The cavern shook violently, rocks and debris raining down around them. "Geomagnetic field fluctuating wildly," Stella reported, her voice barely audible over the roar of the core. "We're seeing widespread power outages and communication disruptions across the planet." Joseph gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his footing as the ground heaved beneath him. "Keep it steady," he called out. "We need to channel this energy into the shield." Above them, on the planet's surface and in orbit, their allies fought their own battles. General Blackwood and Grocknack coordinated the planet's defenses, their combined military expertise put to the ultimate test as they faced threats both cosmic and terrestrial. In space, the combined fleet held their positions, ready to defend against any planetary fragments that might be ejected by the core overload. The Zarn mothership, a behemoth of advanced technology, moved into low orbit, its powerful systems working to stabilize the planet's increasingly erratic rotation. As the energy wave reached its devastating peak, Joseph felt the core's power surge to unprecedented levels. The probes glowed white-hot, channeling more energy than he thought possible. "Shield power at maximum," Stella shouted, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and terror. "It's working, Joseph. The Galactic network is activating." Through the holographic displays, Joseph watched as a shimmering barrier spread across the galaxy, a testament to the combined efforts of countless worlds. The energy wave crashed against this universal shield, its destructive force gradually dissipating. As the immediate threat passed, Joseph allowed himself a moment of relief. But it was short-lived. The planet around them groaned and shuddered, the cost of their daring plan becoming all too clear. "We need to get to the surface," Joseph said, already moving towards the exit. "The real work is just beginning." As they emerged from the underground complex, Joseph was struck by the alien landscape that greeted them. The planet, once familiar, had been transformed by their actions. New mountain ranges thrust into the sky. Oceans had reshaped their boundaries, and the very air crackled with residual energy. Joseph activated his comm link, his voice somber as he surveyed the changed world around them. "Sarah, status report." Sarah's voice came through, tinged with both relief and concern. "We did it, Joseph. The galaxy is safe. But the cost." She paused, and Joseph could hear the weight of responsibility in her words. "Large sections of the planet are now uninhabitable. We're coordinating mass evacuations as we speak." Joseph nodded, though Sarah couldn't see him. "Understood. We'll rendezvous at the command center." There's still much to be done. As Joseph and his team made their way across the transformed landscape, he couldn't help but reflect on the magnitude of what they had accomplished and the challenges that lay ahead. The planet had paid a heavy price for its role in saving the galaxy, and now they faced the daunting task of adapting to this new reality. In the distance, Joseph could see the sleek forms of Zarn ships assisting with the evacuation efforts. The sight filled him with a complex mix of emotions: pride in what they had achieved together, and apprehension about the uncertain future they now faced. As they approached the command center, Joseph caught sight of a familiar figure, General Blackwood, his usually immaculate uniform now covered in dust and grime. The older man's face broke into a weary smile as he saw Joseph's team. "Hell of a day, isn't it?" Blackwood said, his gruff voice carrying a note of respect. Joseph nodded, allowing himself a small smile in return. "That it is, General. That it is." Together, they entered the command center, ready to face whatever challenges this new era might bring. As the doors closed behind them, Joseph couldn't shake the feeling that this was not an end, but a beginning, the dawn of a new age for humanity and its place in the galactic community. As they navigated this new era. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. As the dust settled and the immediate crisis passed, Joseph found his attention drawn to a more personal concern. Zanera, the alien girl who had become an integral part of their team, was struggling. Joseph, Sarah, and Stella made their way through the transformed landscape, heading towards a makeshift medical facility that had been hastily erected in the wake of the planetary changes. The once familiar terrain now felt alien, with new rock formations jutting from the ground and unfamiliar plant life sprouting in vibrant patches. As they entered the facility, the air heavy with the scent of antiseptic and unfamiliar medications, Joseph's heart clenched at the sight of Zanera. She lay on a bio-bed, her usually iridescent skin now pale and dull. Various monitors beeped softly, tracking her vital signs in a language that merged human and alien medical terminology. Dr. Lara Voss, the lead xenobiologist, approached them with a grim expression. "Her condition is deteriorating," she said, her voice low. "Zanera's physiology is struggling to adapt to the planet's new environmental conditions. We're doing everything we can, but—" Joseph nodded, his mind focused. "We'll find a way," he said, looking at Sarah and Stella. "We have to." In the days that followed, Joseph threw himself into the challenge with the same intensity that had driven him to defend the cosmos. He worked alongside Dr. Voss and her team, poring over data on Zanera's unique biology and the planet's altered composition. Sarah became a fixture in the research labs, her quick mind absorbing vast amounts of information on xenobiology. She coordinated with off-world specialists, leveraging the newfound interstellar cooperation to gather insights from across the galaxy. Stella's role proved crucial. Using her enhanced abilities, she maintained a constant mental link with Zanera. "I can feel her life force," Stella explained, her eyes glowing softly as she concentrated. "It's weak, but I'm helping to stabilize it. She's fighting." Days blurred into weeks as they worked tirelessly. Joseph barely slept, catching quick naps between research sessions and experimental treatments. The medical facility became a crucible of innovation, human expertise melding with alien technology in ways never before attempted. Their breakthrough came on a rain-soaked night, when the transformed planet's new weather patterns lashed the facility with sheets of glowing purple precipitation. Joseph, bleary-eyed but still focused, noticed a pattern in Zanera's cellular response to an experimental treatment. "Look at this," he called to Dr. Voss, pointing at a holographic display. "Her cells are adapting, but they need a catalyst." Dr. Voss's eyes widened as she studied the data. "If we can synthesize a compound that mimics the energy signature of her home world, we can give her body the boost it needs to fully acclimate," Joseph finished, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. The next few days were a frenzy of activity. Sarah worked with the engineering team to modify a set of nanites, programming them to produce the synthesized compound. Stella maintained her mental link, guiding the treatment to where it was most needed in Zanera's system. As the treatment progressed, Joseph found himself spending long hours by Zanera's bedside. He talked to her, sharing stories of Earth and their adventures together, hoping that somehow she could hear him. On the 5th day of treatment, Zanera's eyes fluttered open. Her gaze, once clouded with pain, now shone with recognition as she looked at Joseph. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. Joseph felt a lump form in his throat. "Of course we did," he said, taking her hand gently. "You're part of our team, our family." Over the next few weeks, Zanera's recovery accelerated. Her strength returned, and her natural curiosity about her new surroundings grew. Joseph, Sarah, and Stella took turns showing her the transformed world, marveling together at the strange beauty that had emerged from the chaos. As Zanera regained her health, she began to contribute her knowledge to the colony's efforts. Her understanding of ancient alien technology proved invaluable as they worked to repurpose the planetary defense systems for environmental control and terraforming. Joseph watched with pride as Zanera worked alongside human scientists, her insights bridging gaps in understanding that had stumped even the brightest minds. She had a particular talent for intuiting the purpose of complex alien machinery, often solving problems that had plagued the engineering teams for weeks. Months passed, and the colony began to thrive. New habitats rose from the altered landscape, designed to work in harmony with the planet's changed ecosystems. Sarah's agricultural innovations bore fruit, quite literally, as new crops adapted to the mineral-rich soil began to flourish. Stella's abilities continued to evolve, allowing her to act as a living interface between the colonists and the planet's advanced systems. She could sense shifts in the planetary energy grid, predicting and often preventing system overloads or failures before they occurred. As the first anniversary of the Galactic event approached, an air of anticipation filled the colony. The Interstellar Council had announced a ceremony to honor those who had played key roles in averting the cosmic disaster. Joseph stood before a mirror, adjusting the formal uniform that had been specially created for the occasion. It bore insignia that represented both Earth and their new home, a symbol of the bridge they had become between worlds. Sarah entered the room, her own uniform crisp and gleaming. "Ready?" she asked, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Joseph nodded, feeling a mix of pride and humility. "As I'll ever be," he replied. They made their way to the ceremony site, a grand hall that had been constructed to host delegates from across the galaxy. As they entered, Joseph saw familiar faces. General Blackwood, looking uncomfortable but proud in his dress uniform. Dr. Voss, beaming as she chatted with a group of alien scientists. And many others who had been part of their incredible journey. Stella and Zanera joined them, both radiant in their own unique ways. Stella's form shimmered slightly, her energy barely suppressed by her physical appearance. Zanera's skin had regained its healthy iridescence, shifting colors in response to her emotions. As the ceremony began, Joseph listened to speeches from various dignitaries, each praising the cooperation and bravery that had saved countless lives. When it came time for their group to be recognized, they stepped forward together. The Interstellar Council representative, a being of swirling light and shadow, addressed them. For your unwavering courage, your innovative thinking, and your commitment to preserving life across the galaxy, we honor you. Your actions have ushered in a new era of cooperation and understanding between all sentient species. As applause filled the hall, Joseph felt a tug on his sleeve. He looked down to see Zanera, her eyes shining with an emotion he couldn't quite name. She leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "Joseph," she said, "I have a request to make."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.